Good afternoon and welcome to the August Middlesex County Board of Supervisors meeting. I would ask that Mr. Jesse open our meeting with prayer, followed by Matt Walker leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us bow our heads in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, I'd just like to thank you for giving us the opportunity to attend this meeting today, dear Lord. Let's pray for the sick and shed in, and let's give a special prayer for those citizens and families in Ohio and El Paso for the mass shooting. They need very special prayer, dear Lord. And let us make wise and just decisions as we conduct county business. Amen.
Amen. Would all citizens of our nation rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just as a point of information, this stiff neck sitting in the chair today had 4 cervical discs taken out 3 weeks ago, and surgery is apparently a good success. And my wife has charged Mr. Jesse that if I start to fade out or don't behave myself right, he's going to call her and she'll come get me. So, not on any pain meds, so everything should be okay. All right, first item is approval of the consent agenda.
I move we accept it.
Second.
Motion and seconded. I don't hear any discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. So ordered. At this point, I'd like to open the meeting to public comment. Reminder, 3 minutes per citizen unless you're representing 4 or more, and that makes 12. Please come up, state your name and address for the record. First citizen, please.
Good afternoon, Lud Kimbrough, Kennard Lane in Deltaville. A couple of things for you. About the multipurpose pass, I checked with the members of the Maritime Museum about the property coming through there. They were excited to learn more about it, but they did say that instead of a bridge, it would be more in keeping to have a manual pulled ferry that would go across the creek. So that's something to consider. What I wanted to bring to your attention this month, ladies and gentlemen, is the Chesapeake Bay Magazine, which I don't know if you are subscribers there. In its Weekends on the Water recent edition featured 6 Chesapeake Bay towns that it recommends to visit. Deltaville was among those 6, with a 9-page article, 2-page map, 4 pages of advertisements by Norview Marina, Zimmerman Marine, Norton Yachts, Deltaville Marina, and 2 real estate companies. Here's some statistics on the audience that was reached by this magazine. Subscribers own more than 47,000 boats. A third of them are sailboats. 18,000 of them are over 26 feet in length. The subscribers spend over $262 million a year on boating activities, and that doesn't include indirect benefits. 30% of them spend more than $10,000 annually on boating activities, and a third of them live in Virginia. That's about 15,000 boats in Virginia that saw this article. Fishing Bay Yacht Club recently held its junior week, where it taught 150 juniors. And at the end of the regatta, end of that week, they held a junior regatta with 130 participants. They then followed that by the Leukemia Cup Regatta, bringing hundreds of sailors into our county and raising over $140,000 to fight blood cancer. Why does all this happen? In the words of Chesapeake Bay Magazine, Deltaville is surrounded by some of the best sailing, cruising, fishing, and paddling waters on the entire Chesapeake. This is God's gift to Middlesex County, and we need to do everything possible to encourage and support the businesses, visitors, and vacation homeowners who come here and contribute to our tax base because of that gift. The entire county benefits from this gift, and we need to cherish and nurture it in every way possible. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Boy, that was good timing. Next citizen, please.
My name is John Scott, 444 Rosegill Court, Urbana. And I want to bring to the council's attention something that I mentioned recently, the county administrator, regarding making the general public aware of facilities and locations in the county. This was prompted by the electoral board's recent move to a new facility, a new physical location. There is nothing apparently obvious to someone who had not been here before where to find municipal services. There's very little signage as far as this particular plant goes. While we were downstairs in the office of the registrar, numerous times individuals would come to us to pay their taxes, to get permits and other materials. So what I'm asking for is signage to be placed at various locations that would better identify where we can find whatever services we might be looking for. Now, I understand there's a great deal of historical concern about putting signage here on this property, but there must be some way we can do this so that it will make it convenient for visitors, newcomers, and even people who've been here for years who have never used some of the services that they may be seeking. The final thing that I want to make you aware of is I know that, as the song goes, there is no free lunch. And this is a cost factor. But the returns on the investment would make it easier for the public to find and to execute the services that they're seeking, to have executed the services they're seeking. And yes, I'm being very selfish about this because I want them to know where our registrar's office is. It's not any longer here. The signs that have been placed are temporary, and we actually need a directory that would point to not only what is immediately in the county administrative services area, but what is a bit of a distance away. Like, when we moved into the new building was the first time I realized that there's some services that are offered in that office complex that's next door. And I still tell today, if I were to come to this building, would have to have someone in the building to tell me where it is, how to get there. Because that street over there, as we pointed out in the newspaper article that was just run, we wanted that article run because very few people know about that street at all. I mean, it's there, but most of the traffic that flows right past this building, and this is the primary building. I'll mention one more thing. There's a big difference between the county municipal building services and the court. And people get this building, the old courthouse, very much confused with that building, which is the actual courthouse building for justice to be served. So I'm asking you to please consider, if not today, then tomorrow, or sometime in the near future, adding some signage to our facilities, to the physical plant, to make sure that that particular element is covered. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Next citizen, please. Are there none? Seeing none, we will close the public comment period and go into reports from constitutional officers, and I'm so glad to see our Commissioner of Revenue and Treasurer here today. Kathy and I had a meeting with them some weeks ago, and we plan on working very closely to make sure that where the supervisors set the taxes and then other folks do the assessments and collections, and then we turn around and spend it, that the taxpayers get the best bang for their buck. So first off, we've got Betty Bray with the Treasurer's report. We had a balance sheet report, pages 48 through 50 in your board packet. Subsequently, we've gotten several blue stripe sheets that, Bonnie?
Yeah, right, I hate to interrupt you. Can we do it together because it's...
Absolutely.
we're working
Absolutely.
together.
Sure.
So
Absolutely.
nothing separate here.
So if you all would like to come up together and maybe walk us through the blue stripe sheet, because I've not had a chance to look at those since they just presented to me when I came in. Thank you, ladies.
Yeah, well, you see the reports I gave you. They're the two lists are the real estate and personal property that waiting for you, gonna run it in the paper. That would be what would go in the paper.
Can y'all split the mic a little bit better just so people can hear?
That's
There you
what
go.
will go in the paper, the real estate and personal property delinquent list, if you want to put it in the paper. Last year, we just ran it on the webpage. It's the delinquent list for 18. So that's entirely up to whatever you want to do, how much you want to spend. We put it in the paper, it's going to run anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 for the ad. So if we put it on the webpage, there's no cost. You know, it's just, we'll put a small ad and say it's available on the webpage.
There you go.
And the other list is just the percentages showing the change from last month to this month in collections. So. So I don't know if you have any questions or not.
Well, I haven't had a chance. John, you've had a little bit
Yeah,
more
sorry, I
time
was
to
on
review this.
vacation
Kathy,
last
I think
week,
you
so-
have.
Do you want to address this?
You can go first, then I'll see if there's anything left.
I just have a couple of questions, if you don't mind. First of all, thank you for meeting with us, and thank you for this information here on delinquent property taxes. That's what we're talking, the list you're talking about, real estate and personal property. Can you tell us which businesses are delinquent in the meals tax?
No, ma'am. No.
Okay, now, and the meals tax is collected by a restaurant or establishment, held in trust, and then turned over to the county. And when we talked before, there was a concern that revealing that violated your guidelines from the state because it's linked to the sales revenue of a business, right? Isn't that
Yes, ma'am.
the justification? Okay. So if we don't have that number, but if a business that is trusted to collect the meals tax, paid by the customer, keeps that money, what is done about it?
What we're doing now, trying to get it back.
Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, what
Steph?
we're doing is we're summons them to court, and they could be arrested because it's really embezzlement when you're taking it before. Okay, what's happening? The restaurant, they're taking the money, and they're not getting it back. So that's what we're doing now.
So what you're telling me is that you
We're
can
threatening
summons
them.
the business.
Excuse me?
You can summons the business and tell them that you must come in.
And we'll talk about it and might get a pay plan or whatever. So that's what we're doing now.
So if a
We're
business,
one-on-one now.
right, if the business is delinquent, they may receive a summons from you or from the treasurer, from the revenue, okay, Commissioner of Revenue. They come in at that point, and then a plan for payment is agreed to.
And we've gotten payments. We really have.
Okay, great, great.
Could I interject? What is the longest payback plan that you have?
5 years.
Because as I understand it, there's a 5-year,
Right.
in other words, if somebody doesn't pay it and 5 years goes by, they don't owe it anymore, or we can't collect it.
A year will fall off after 5 years.
Okay, all right.
1 year would fall off, but
All right, but,
we're
okay,
trying to make it so that it'll all be paid within the 5-year period.
understood.
Okay,
Excuse me.
and then, and to your point with the summonses, in trying to discern, you know, what the responsible course of action for the board or the county is, I've been doing a little research, and Louisa County, which is a similar size to us and similar, near Lake Anna, a lot of restaurants, resort type thing, they, in 2018, summons and took to court 4 restaurants for a total of $43,000. One of which was, one restaurant was a majority of that. And I don't have an update as of, you know, this month, but the report that was reported in the newspaper said that they, just taking them to court, they started to get payments in. I was interested, though, that county, similar size, their revenue per year from meals tax is $1 million.
Wow.
And I thought, that's a potential. And as we discussed in our meeting, one of the incentives here, aside from the integrity issue and everybody pays the tax, we have an ordinance for the meals tax, is that the meals tax is one way that we share the costs with our visitors of our fire and rescue or law enforcement protection, right? So people may not live here, but they're contributing to our revenue by paying a meals tax. So it's not just on our residents. So that is a good thing in a resort community, that you help. So all the people who are here in the summertime or on weekends are helping to share the costs of administering the county. 25% of our meals tax is targeted to help contribute to our fire and rescue services. So it's really important to us that we get that so that we can maintain the level. So that, I think, is a big part of it. Another part it contributes to capital. So I guess my last question is, having addressed this, and I know that you've, putting time and effort into it, and just from the big picture point of view, do you think the county can handle collection of meals tax under the current system? Or do we, the county administration, the Board of Supervisors, is there something we need to be doing to help us have a system where 100% of the people collecting trust taxes, whether it's meals or lodging, are complying? What do we need to do the job better? And I mean the we as in the whole county.
Probably nothing. I mean, you're doing what you're doing. You're bringing it to our attention, and we're taking care of
it. Do we have any idea?
Too many people doing one thing. You can't have a crowd of people. So that's what I'm basically saying. So we're taking care of it. We complain with so much work. It's a lot of work, but we still take care of it. Too many. These jobs, you can't have too many hands in the pot to do things. Not, evil, just to do things, because there's no room, and it's just, we're going to take care of it. And if we need help, we're going to come to you, believe me.
Okay, because I mean, it is our responsibility as the board to make sure that you have, whether it's the computer program, the hardware, the staffing, whatever it is, the money for a newspaper ad, if that is the course that's decided on. So I just want to make sure that we're out there as being receptive to solving this. Can you tell us the total amount in delinquent meals tax that's outstanding?
Not really. I mean, not. Huh?
Is that because the information is not available, or because you shouldn't tell it?
That's the total amount that's due since 14.
And if you don't have it now and you can give it to us later, I think that,
Well, and we're talking about just the meals tax, not the real estate. You gave us the real estate today and the personal properties. But the total amount of the meals tax in terms of a budget shortfall, if we're assuming a certain dollar amount, how far off are we?
The way I read all these things that Heather gave me, I don't think we can give you that information.
I'm sorry, I didn't really understand.
No, I don't think we can give you that information. From all the information that Heather gave me, according to the code section 58.1-3, I don't think we can give you any information on it, really.
So you can't give us the information because it would violate the Virginia State Code?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But do you have the information?
Yes,
Okay.
I have it right here.
Can you
Okay.
give us an approximate amount? Plus or minus $1,000?
Sneaky.
Sneaky devil.
I think what we're saying is, as we pursue this, are we spending more money trying to collect it than it's worth?
No,
Okay.
that won't answer.
Okay. Thank you.
No, we're not. You know, this information is not in a public assessment roll book or anything. And that's one of those things we're not supposed to disclose.
Yes, ma'am.
So, we just can't disclose it.
Can you tell us how many people who collect trust taxes are delinquent in the county? How many
Work on doing this.
establishments are delinquent?
How many people are delinquent? I didn't count up how many. Can you tell how many? You know, okay.
We can do that.
Okay. She has that number.
Can you tell us how many numbers?
I don't know. I can look it up. I can get it to you, but I don't know right now how many.
Okay.
I don't go individual, so.
So I think when we're asking for a
Thank you.
report monthly, what we got half an hour ago on personal property and real estate.
Everybody's like crazy with personal property, so yeah. Okay.
Well,
Because it's.
everybody's crazy because it's taxes. And
Well-
when I look at our budget and I have very good control over our expenditures, but my forecasting on revenues is incomplete, and I'm left raising taxes when I really should be able to tell every one of the constituents that I've collected every penny of the taxes owed or as close to it as possible. And my answer is, I don't even know how much meals tax is collected. I don't know how much is delinquent. My constituents aren't accepting that answer. So what I'd like to offer is, without naming the name of the county, unless you look at the address, so I guess that won't work, but, uh-oh.
It's got to warm up.
We've found numerous other counties that are addressing on their website delinquent taxes. And as an example, and they give customer names, meaning the taxpayers' names. I don't care to do that. I don't think public shaming is the way to get the tax collected, especially in a smaller county like this, where our
Really
businesses. Well, hear me out for a second. What I'm saying is, I don't think I need the names of the individuals. I don't think I need the amounts, but I'd like to see in aggregate how many instances there are of someone being delinquent, not at the exact amount that they're delinquent, but for instance, this county has amounts due greater than $25,000. Again, it lists their names. I would not do that. For me, that could be customer 1, customer 2, customer 3. And then that's it. And then I would also like to see at the bottom of each of these, in aggregate, that's $314,000 of lost revenue as of month X, August, right? And then if you go to the next category, it's $10,000 to $25,000. So what I think we're all trying to see is, how many delinquents are there? How big are the problems? And how can we target the biggest offenders and start to know that progress is being made, again, without knowing who they are, without knowing specifically how much, but so that we can manage the tax delinquency issue. Right now what we have is we walk into a room and there's no light. We can't even tell our constituents how bad the problem is. We're not looking to shame anyone within your departments or out in the community. We're just trying to see month to month, are we improving on the meals tax delinquency? Because if these people aren't paying taxes, and we know they're not, it's revenue that we have to find elsewhere, and the elsewhere is the constituents that are paying their taxes. And that's where this becomes crazy.
We are very, very careful because of the code, and that's why we're so touchy, because of the code.
This is on the World Wide Web.
Well, I'm just saying, I'm just telling you why we're that way.
What I'm saying is, in Arlington County, they probably have a couple more lawyers than just Heather. No offense.
Oh, yeah, they do.
But they're a much bigger entity, and I'm not expecting the exact same level of service that they get with probably a department of yours that has probably 500 employees. But at the same time, you have this information. You can redact the names of the individuals, and I believe you can tell us, at least in tranches of amounts greater than 25,000. That's all I'm looking for.
I don't really mind doing that.
Okay.
It's just that I'm so afraid. I'm serious, I am. But I'm gonna try to buckle down.
Okay. Well, and I understand your fear, and maybe, Heather, you're going to continue your research potentially, and maybe give a little more cover to the constitutionals that, I spent 45 minutes today prior to the meeting, and I got through A, B, and C in the counties, and I think that's about 15 of the 95 counties, and I found 5 of them that are doing similar things to this. So there are other people that are going to go down with you, and a lot of them.
Thanks.
Well, and I say that facetiously, Bonnie, but your concern is legitimate, but at some point, there truly is safety in numbers. And I can't find a single case where a commissioner of revenue or a treasurer has been pursued because they were telling their supervisors how bad their tax delinquency problem was. I haven't found it.
And just to follow up on this too, this is not, personal. It's not about you. I understand that you have guidelines and you have to live up to them. We're trying to address the larger problem and how do we move forward from here. And I bring this up because early days when I was talking to more people and appointed to the Board of Supervisors, occasionally people would say to me, I don't know about this lodging tax, nobody else is paying, or they're not paying it over here at this establishment. Why am I getting this bill? And I said, oh, I'm sure it's just, they are paying it. I'm sure that's just the perception. I'm sure there's somebody's mistaken. And that happened more than once. So the problem is, if the perception is among businesses who are collecting the trust taxes of lodging and meals, which is coming from the customer, they hold it and then turn it over to the county. If there's a perception that some businesses are doing it and others are not, then that's a problem for our integrity, and it's a problem for the people who are complying. So we don't want the compliance to fall off. Do you see what I mean? Someone who is complying might say, well, why should I do it if nobody else is? So that's the concern. The question is already out there.
But that's like, to me, you're saying like, so all of y'all don't pay your taxes to the IRS, so why should I keep paying mine?
Well, actually, the federal tax system, it works because
of illogical thinking to me, because if I'm going to keep myself straight, I'm going to continue to keep myself straight.
I completely agree. I
See,
completely
and-
agree with you. I'm just saying what people have said to me. Why are they dinging me? This is a business person in Middlesex.
Well, I
When
mean, if
somebody
you're a
else is
business
getting it.
I'm a business person. I have to pay lodging tax. I'll pay my lodging tax for our vacation place every month. I know other people don't. I still pay mine.
Right.
I think Kathy's probably getting at the people who do it because it's right, or the people who do it because there are consequences for not doing it. And I think we're talking about the consequences. So there are some people that are different than all of us.
If it takes consequences to make them do it,
Yeah.
that's what it takes. I'm sure people pay IRS because they know it's consequences.
Right. So that's, I think,
is
what-
all this, To me, that's just the way the world operates.
And
I mean, you know, if you don't do what you're supposed to do, there are gonna be consequences. These people we're collecting from now, they know their consequences.
okay,
They're getting their summons. They're being told if they don't keep these payments up, they miss one, we're going to court, they're going to jail.
Can you
That's
report?
what they're told.
thank you,
That's what
Betty.
they're
That's what
told.
we
When they
needed to
come
know.
in, we go over their account, we set up a plan, they sign the agreement, and we tell them in the agreement that we will change it if we think that it's not enough and they're not doing it right and we don't like, and we will change the plan. We have that right to change it at any time. And if they miss one time, they're coming back in, we're going to court, and they could go to jail. I mean, it's just, so that plain as day. And that's it, they're going to jail. Their name will be on the paper then, and people will see, so-and-so and so-and-so did not pay his meals tax. Oh my gosh, Middlesex put him in jail. You know.
What
'cause he didn't pay
triggers
his
you to
meals
send
tax.
the summons? Is it after 1 year of delinquency? Is it after a certain amount? What
Well,
triggers this?
we're just going through the list, and if they've missed, well, we've got a couple right now we're working on that have missed 3 months, and they closed their business. So we're summoning them, and if we find them,
Now, do you treat it differently if the business is already closed versus whether the business is still operating?
no sirree.
So is it 3 months that you send the summons?
Some of them have closed at 3 months, yeah, we're gonna send it to them just like we would have done one that had been,
But when you say
4
some
years.
of them, does that mean some of them are at 4 and 5 and 6 months?
summons, yes, it doesn't matter. And
What triggers the
What
summons?
we're gonna try to do, catch them after 90 days from now on. Some of them have gotten biased, I'll admit that. They did get biased, but we're working at, try to keep them in the 90-day range.
So
if we haven't
is
gotten
it
from them.
workload that makes it that 3 months isn't the gospel? In other words, some of them go to 4 and 5 because you've got so much going on at whatever part of the season, and it's irregular.
And that's what's happened, and I think with it coming in and the transition of help and all, it slipped. I'll be honest, in
Okay,
my
no,
office, that's what happened.
both of you, I hope you understand. I appreciate your honesty.
I'll be honest, that's what happened in my office.
Yep, understood. And
Yeah, and that's what happened, and it slipped, and I'm sorry it did. It shouldn't have, but it did.
And I trust that you're
And
doing
we're
everything you
trying
can to
not
bring
to
it
let
back.
that happen
I guess
again.
what I'm saying, Betty, is if that kind of problem exists, if there was a report where you were saying, all of my summons are up to date for anybody over 3 months, or I've slipped, we could see that, and then we could come to you and actually do our job as supervisors and say, Betty, what can we do? Do we need to use more tax, TACS, or do we, what tools do we have available to us? Is there temporary manpower additions? I don't know, but you do. We want this to be on our agenda monthly so that we can see from both of your offices, and this may just be my construct, but I do think of you kind of the way you think of you. Your two offices work together.
Yes.
And what I'd really like is a monthly report that gets so stable and consistent that we don't need to pull you out of your office. It's just a report only. But what we need to do is get from here to something that we, because when you tell me AH, AF, AP, MH, PP, VL, you know what that all means in your sleep. I have a day job, and I don't necessarily keep up with all the acronyms. The only one I could figure out was mobile home, I think. But the point is, you need to translate this a little bit for us, and we need to make this easier for you and for us. So we have two bodies that are talking to each other. You know your language, we know some of it. We need only a little bit of information. There's some that you're uncomfortable providing because of some of the statutes that Heather's quoting, and I understand that. But in the end, for us to supervise, we need to watch your department, not because we don't trust what you're doing, but so that we can go into budget season with a really deep understanding of the revenue side of our budget, so that by the time we 5 agree on a budget, whoever the 5 may be at any given point in time, we can go to the constituents and say with great certainty, I know what's going on the revenue side of my house, I know what's going on the expense side of my house, and then the debates in the public town halls and things aren't about our management, it's about our visions for the community and what we think is important to invest in and how much we can afford. But we first, I think all of us, all the constitutionals and the supervisors need to come together and speak a similar language. And with both of you having put in so many years of service in your departments, and both of you retiring from these positions, I think this is a really unique opportunity for us to work together to make sure that your what's after predecessor? Your
Successor.
Your successor will be in a position where they understand all that we don't understand, and we're going to be leaning on you to help with that transition in both of those offices in a way where you can say, here's all the things those supervisors don't understand when they call us to the carpet. We need to begin that conversation on a level where we start speaking the same language and we just understand the revenue side and the extent to which we have a problem. And I'm going to respect your fear of persecution and litigation, but I'm not going to give up on understanding the revenue side of our house. So we'll find a solution, and we'll keep working on this report every month. And if it isn't said often enough, thank you both for all you do for our community and have for so long. And I hope I get to retire soon too.
And the one other thing that to dovetail on that is that once we establish what we can have and the information that we have, then that forms a column, and then next year the new information is here, and we can see if there are trends.
Right.
If we're trending towards not collecting, then we've got to take some other action. I'd like to shift gears momentarily. Personal property and real estate tax. You ladies do a beautiful job in that regard. It's these trust taxes and this other stuff that has, and we're going to get it fixed.
Yeah.
B-poll and business license are two things that are not near and dear to me, but we do have them, and we are trying to be competitive with our surrounds. What do we do to make sure that businesses that are operating in the county have a business license? And I'm not baiting you with that, because I'm dealing with an issue in my district right now where we've got numerous zoning violations and every other thing for an ongoing business that I would bet you any amount that you were willing to match that they don't have a business license, because they don't have anything else. And on that same question, back where I came from, the local banks will not open up a business account without seeing a copy of the business license. So somebody can't write a check to ABC Company and have the bank honor it until the bank has seen a business license. So I'm not a fan. I think business licenses are fine. The B-poll is a tax that I think is second only to the death tax in unfairness, but we have it and we rely on revenue from it, so I think we have to do the best job that we can with it. But what do we do to make sure that these pickup trucks hauling trailers full of lawnmowers, that operation is paying their fair share to the county?
Well, they have certain areas they have to start from on the second floor. They have to get a permit, whatever, and they have to give a name. What's the name? It's a fictitious name. It has to go record. It has to go over to the courthouse and be recorded before they come to us.
I mean, I'm talking about the guy that just has a pickup truck and a trailer and several lawnmowers on it, and he goes and cuts somebody's grass and takes money for it and goes to the next house. How do we ever catch up with that individual? And I'm not picking on lawn care, but that's just...
That's who you see.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
We don't know unless he comes in.
No, and people will tell you, but you just can't do that. If the person doesn't want to come and sign things, whatever, you just can't take this, sign this. We have to have a business license. You can't operate. They don't pay you any attention.
So is that an argument for just, there's some things that is beyond the scope of government. The public needs to be made aware that if you're going to transact with people that don't have licenses, it has an impact, and it can mean less protection for you. I mean, is that part of the issue? I mean, if you decide that somebody comes in with a van and it doesn't show the license, contract, insured, blah blah blah, you're making a decision that may be impacting your taxes. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there that some of this may not be the responsibility of the constitutionals to make the public aware of that responsibility.
Well, they're not going to catch everything 100%. You understand? I know people that's in the community that do a little grass cutting, helping some elderly and different things like that. They don't have a business license, but they're helping out some of the elderly. Then they put a little bit of money in their pocket, and they're not wealthy, and they're just getting by. But it's nothing going to be 100%. And I think, I understand the job that you're doing is not easy. You got a lot of moving targets, but it's nothing going to be 100%, as we all know that. And you know, I'm personally not going to try to tell you how to do your job, and I'm not saying nobody else is saying that. But you know, I know you have a lot of things going on, and if it's something specific that I need to know, I'm going to go in there and talk to you about it and get all the information I need. You know, I'm just saying everything's not perfect, and we're not going to catch everything. But if you can get 90% of it and keep rolling, I think that's going to be the best, because you're not going to get 100%. And we're not Northern Virginia or anywhere else that way. They got a lot of people that can look at things and might put things under microscopes, you know, and try to catch everything going in there. But it's a number thing. I understand that. I realize that. And you know, I'm just speaking from Wayne Jesse's eyes right now, not speaking from anybody else's eyes. And but you know, I understand your job is not easy, and y'all are getting ready to go out. But I understand the area in which we got to go. But it's a working process, and that's all it is. It's a working process that we got to deal with. And the meal tax hasn't been implemented for how many years? It was 5 years by now. It's been about 5 years, so that's a work in the process, because we had it voted down 3 times over the years just to get it implemented. And the only way we got it implemented because we tied the rescue squad and the fire departments in it. That's the only way we got the meal tax started. So that's just a little history. I know y'all all know about it, but you know, it's life.
Well, I think that for our first meeting with getting both of you ladies back in the fold for reporting to the board on a monthly basis, that we've had a very lively and very good conversation, and I think we all have a better understanding. And you all have probably been standing now for about 20 minutes, maybe 25, and that might be enough for you. If nobody else has any questions. Matthew?
I have a quick recommendation. Some of the board members have brought websites to our attention.
Mm-hmm.
I would recommend that we forward those websites to
Yes.
Bonnie and Betty so they can reach out to their counterparts in those localities.
Very good.
And get a more comfortable feel on why they're doing and how they're doing.
And that's just one more, that's another aspect of this. Middlesex is not the only county dealing with this.
Excuse me?
Middlesex is not the only county dealing with this. Counties
know.
throughout the state.
We know.
So it's not just about Middlesex, it's about how do we do this in a better way. So thank you very much.
And one final thing for me, just on real estate and personal property, because those are the 2 reports that we have very good data on. It appears that personal property delinquencies are currently at 155,000, making us, by my calculations from our budget for 2020, at 96.8% collection. So great work there. What I noticed immediately, because this does actually list the amount due by individual, I arbitrarily, and this is again personal property, and I'll do the same exercise for real estate, I arbitrarily noticed that 13 of them, and there's hundreds, are over $1,000. In aggregate, that's about 13% of the money we're missing. So that's the kind of information that I like about the tranched sort of here's the big offenders, medium-sized offenders, and it focuses, and as you're probably already focused on, but you probably know those 13 names by heart in a way that us looking in a report, we don't need to know the names, we just want to see the progress on the big ones.
Almost half of that is in a delinquency.
Yeah, so, and then on real estate, the total
delinquency,
amount of
of
delinquency
bankruptcy.
is 279,000. That shows us at 97.9% collection versus our 2020 revenue budget forecast. Again, I chose an arbitrary number. People with over $4,000 of delinquency, and I don't know the age of it, but it's over 4,000. There were 13 of them, and that represents 23% of that delinquency. So the point is, if you take a large part of the top offenders, if you will, it's 13 and 23% of them by just addressing 13 of them. So that's where, as a supervisor, I would be focusing my attention and saying, how are we doing with those 13? Are they on payment plans? Because that may be the case, and so you're already addressing it, but in little tranches. But
Yeah.
I do want you to sit down, and I'll stop talking. But that's where my thinking is.
Thank you all very much.
Make a note.
And I think we've said it, but the problems that we're having are with relatively new taxes that we just have to get used to how to deal with them.
That's
and,
right.
The real estate and personal property, I think, are just right up there. They're where they need to be. Not, we'd like to have them better, but they're handled very well by you ladies, and we thank you.
Here, here.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to
Come see
agency.
us.
Thank you all. Moving on to agency and staff reports, I don't see anybody from, I do see somebody from the Virginia Department of Transportation.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is David Beal.
David,
I'm
welcome.
filling in for Joyce McGowan today. Joyce is on a temporary assignment in the Bristol district. My regular job is in Fredericksburg, but I'll be down here in Saluda for the next few weeks. So look forward to working with you all on any issues that might arise during my time here. I will say it's probably been about 15 years since I worked with Mr. Walker, so it's good to see you again. And,
His younger sister worked for me in King William County.
So you had 15 years of good luck and then it turned.
It's good to see our paths cross again.
Good to see you.
I'm just going to go through the report here. I don't know if you've had a chance to review it. In my review of it, everything looked pretty routine. Under construction projects completed, we've completed the paving on Route 17 and on 33. I'm sure you noticed some issues out here on 33 that we had to do some remedial work on. We actually discovered there's another road underneath of 33 about 18 inches down, and some of that material was bad, so when we milled it and repaved it, we got into some of that and had to replace some of that. We had a spot right out in front of the residency that took some extra attention. Your last unpaved road in the county, Canoe House Road, Route 605, that'll start next week with the hard surfacing of that. All the resurfacing routes there listed, I believe, are complete now. 605 will go back on the resurfacing schedule after we finish the hard surfacing. We'll put it on the resurfacing schedule the following year to shoot it again to make sure that's a good surface. Bridge projects, Route 17 southbound is a superstructure replacement that goes to add in October, and then Route 625 over Barracks Pond. The planned start date for that is in November 2019, and that's a state forces job. And the traffic engineering requests, we completed a request on 609 Gales Road. The speed limit was deemed appropriate, no change is warranted. We did install some school bus stop ahead signs. 1041 Whiting Creek Road, we reduced the speed from 35 to 25, and there's an ongoing discussion with the golf cart signage. We also looked, not on your report, but I wanted to give you an update on Timber Neck Road. Timber Neck Road narrows at a private road, Hamble Lane, and from there to the dead end, we're going to post a speed limit of 25. So it'll be reduced from 35 to 25 from Hamble to the dead end. And then Perry Lane and Marina Drive, right there in that same area, they will also have a 25 mile an hour posted speed. And then we're going to add some no outlet signs on Timber Neck and on Horseshoe Bend. Currently under review, we're still looking at Route 615, Town Bridge Road. We had a request for centerline rumble strips. And then we also had a request on Coach Point Road for a speed reduction. And those studies are at the district under review. Maintenance, we obviously completed the pavement repairs out here and on 17. We continue to patch potholes, replace pipes, and working on all of our mowing and pipe washing. Now you can see there the land use on the last page, the land use highlights. I know we're also working with HRSD on some force main sewer installation here locally. With that, if you all have any questions or items for me, I'd be happy to field those as I'm able.
Any questions?
How long are you Joyce's stand-in?
When they voluntold me, it was 6 weeks.
6 weeks?
So I
We'll
think
see you next month.
at least through Labor Day.
Okay.
But it wouldn't surprise me if I'm here a little longer.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you all.
Moving on to school matters, I see Tracy back there and don't see Dr. Pete, so I'm going to assume that Tracy will take care of that.
Yes, sir. Dr. Gretz is out of town at another meeting, so I am here in his place to let you know what we've got going on until our school year starts. Our new teachers actually start next week on the 13th, and they will spend the 13th through the 20th meeting with central office, our principals, our specialists, so that we can review and share with them our vision and mission and goals, as well as our instructional focus for the year, specifically on deeper learning. Our opening convocation is August 21st. You all will be receiving an invitation for that, but it's at 8:30 in the morning at St. Clair Walker Middle School, and we kick off with breakfast. And then our convocation speaker, Scott Habib, who is a principal in Salem, but he's also a nationally known speaker and author. So we're excited to have him join us in Middlesex to kick off our school year with us. When Dr. Gretz was here last month, I believe, he shared with you a 3-phase plan for our strategic plan, Navigation 2020, which is up for review, and you should have received an email from him with a link for a survey for that. And I know we've had at least someone on the board complete that. We do ask you to take the time to do that. We very much want our community input, so feel free to share that with others so that they can give us their input on our focus for our next set of our strategic plan. Lastly, our students return to school on September 3rd. And what I've brought to share with you is the schedule of our new teacher events. I have paper copies I can leave for you, and then a schedule of all of our division-wide events. We try to invite you to things that are going on in our buildings throughout the year. But sometimes we may forget to do that, so I did bring our schedule that we've got planned out for the entire year for all 3 of our schools. So that's where we are, and we are ready to take off and running with new teachers next week, and then our former staff, and then our kids. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer those also.
How many new teachers?
We have 12 new teachers.
And roughly broken out across which schools, do you know?
They are about equal in all 3 schools.
Roughly 444?
About 444,
And
yes.
we have 1 vacancy we're still working on?
1 vacancy we're still working on.
Which is carpentry?
That is correct.
So if the public is listening and knows any people that might be qualified for a carpentry position, I know Dr. Pete has reached out to a number of people in the community, and so have I, but we've worked really hard, the school board in particular has worked really hard to bring a response to the community who has told us we need more preparation for trades. And we've moved mountains within the complex up there at the high school to make this happen. Now we've got to find a teacher, and I'm sure we will. But for year 1, it's just a carpentry 1 position, I think. And
that's correct, which is just a part-time position now, so we are flexible in how to make that work, and certainly the state will work with us on licensure requirements, but we have almost literally moved mountains, as you've said, to make that space ready. So we certainly welcome any suggestions.
Yeah, anybody out there in the public, we need to promote that we're seeking this person for sure.
How many hours a day would that position require?
It will be about an hour and a half a day. Like I said, the state will work with us on licensure and flexibility on that.
Seems like, Mr. Chairman, we have a member present that built this octagon gazebo. That's carpentry level 3 right there.
We're just looking for 1 right now.
The 3 part was right. No.
But if you have suggestions, just give us a call. Let us know. We've had several conversations in the community, and are at a point where we're ready to make this work. So.
Very good.
Yeah. And thank you for the work on recruiting to fill those positions. I know it's getting a little bit more difficult to fill teaching positions anywhere in Virginia, and so congratulations for reaching out and making sure we get the best.
Thank you. We're excited about our hires, ready for them to start with us.
Okay.
Very good.
All right.
Thank you, Tracy.
All right. Thank you all.
The social services report is the report only, pages 54 through 56 in your board packet. And Melissa Welch, our registrar, is here to give us an update. Come on up.
Hi. This isn't really an update, it's an invitation. August 21st, which is in 2 weeks, Wednesday, from 3 to 6, we're going to have an open house at our new office. We're going to have a voting machine on, like, hands-on demonstration, so if someone wants to come in and actually see how it works, goes in, what happens to it. it doesn't get shredded, it actually goes in and gets counted. And we're going to have our poll book set up so they can see actually what the officers of election are looking at behind the scenes. We're going to have a few refreshments and some door prizes. So I wanted to get the word out. I'm putting it on Facebook and ad in the paper, and I've put up some flyers throughout the county. But I want you all to attend if you're willing, and invite your neighbors and friends, and I hope to have a lot of voters there for educational purposes, to find out what we do, and we're going to have applications there to become an officer of election to work at the polls, and we're going to teach about absentee voting and when, which is 45 days prior to every election, and just hope everyone is educated, but that's all I'm here for. Please come and see me. Do you have a question?
Just a quick
Yeah.
question. I'm trying to think to Mr. Scott's recommendations about how we get the word out about this. I think it's great that you're already on top of this in some manner, but other than the newspaper and Facebook, could you go out to your election officers and see, hey, everybody, I need you to spread the word as well? Because the word of mouth sometimes is still the most effective down here.
I do plan on emailing all of my officers of election just because I have their emails.
Yes, perfect.
And that's how we communicate a lot. So I'll just add a little plug in there. Please invite your friends also.
And maybe some of the Republican and Democratic Party leaders, they're connected with those that are voting, but they're also motivated to get more voters in theory. So I'm brainstorming. I want to see people know that we're not only having developed your new facility, we're developing a number of new offices downstairs. And we, to Mr. Scott's point, we really need to get the word out and make sure everybody knows how we're organized over here now.
All right.
Thank you, Melissa.
Just as a quick question, we have no plans of not using or always having a machine that gives us a paper copy of the vote. Is that correct?
That is correct.
It would never be 100% electronic.
Under current law, we are not allowed to use them at all.
It's illegal now to be totally electronic.
It is.
And we just got a new
The
machine.
General Assembly may change their mind one day, but right now, every locality in the whole state is on a scan base. Yes.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Moving on to regular agenda items, Mr. Walker, I think you've got something on a couple of easements.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the board, we've got two items. The Water Authority has two easements in front of the board for consideration, and I believe the Broadband Authority has two easements as well. Now, my colleague Kevin was here, but I'll handle all four of these at once if that's okay. What we have in your packet between pages 57 and 65 are a number of temporary easements, two of which were needed for the Water Authority for construction of the Eastern Middlesex water main, and two of which are needed for installation of a proposed conduit the Broadband Authority is working on to operate under a dig once kind of a policy where, because we have a contractor engaged and employed in deploying the water line, it would be gratuitous and advantageous for us to go ahead and put in a conduit to house future broadband services if and when necessary. These easements make that happen, and what I'm asking for the board's authorization for is to authorize the chairman and myself to sign these easements on behalf of Middlesex County. They're both temporary construction easements, which means after construction is over, they automatically go away. So it's not a permanent easement, it's a temporary construction easement need.
Looking for a motion to that effect?
Just a question, Matt.
Yep.
Am I not signing those for the Broadband Authority?
Well, this is the easement from the property owner, which the property owner is the county.
Ah.
You're receiving these.
Got it.
Yes, sir.
You'll sign it at your meeting.
Got it.
Do we have a motion to that
Also
effect?
move for the temporary easement.
Motion.
Second.
Duly seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, so ordered.
If only they were all so easy.
Amen to that.
All right, that takes care of that. And then I guess, John, you're going to talk to us about the grant and authorization to participate in the grant match.
Yeah, and it's going to be a hopefully a short update, but what has evolved is we've always considered applying for the state funds that are in the VATI grant, but we really didn't think we had a strong enough case on our own. We started talking with Atlantic Broadband, and out of that, Atlantic Broadband got in a conversation with the Northern Neck PDC, Planning District Commission, and through a number of us getting together and discussing this, we've been able to do one of these regional alliances that all of us talk about and think are important. But we've gotten 6, maybe 7 counties to agree to go into this grant together. And we've talked with Evan Feinman, who is the governor's office broadband czar, if you will. And he's given a very favorable review to the notion that by banding together 6 or 7 similar rural communities that have the same broadband access problem, it's one huge plus for our application towards getting construction funding from the state. What we're asking for, and you can apply for a grant however you want, but if you're too aggressive, you lower your chances of getting it. If you're not aggressive enough, you still have to fund the difference. We've asked the state, based on our analysis of what they'll likely give us and what's not too aggressive, what's optimized, we're asking them to match 50% of the construction costs. What are we constructing? We're talking about 3 neighborhoods in our community that we've identified that don't have that last mile in front of an aggregate of a lot of passes or people that would be likely to take up the service if it was right there and they could sign on. So the projects, and these are rough numbers, are one is located in Urbana, Ivy Shores / Red Hill. One is located in Kate's Neck Road in Topping. And I pushed Atlantic Broadband to get the engineering done to also include Bennett Farm Road, also in Topping. If all of those subscribers, if the project gets built, if we get the grant and the project gets built, that would mean 80 homes, and I don't know what our population density per home potentially is, but I would assume that means roughly 160 people out of 10,000, which makes it an actual thing. I mean, and you have to remember, 10,000 of us are not without broadband. It's a much smaller number. So what we're attacking is getting broadband to everyone, and this potentially would extend where our network is to another 160 users. The cost of construction, according to Atlantic Broadband, who's, again, made this shovel ready and done the engineering, is roughly $200,000. We're asking the state for $100,000, so that would be 50% of construction cost. And then we've gotten Atlantic Broadband to commit to $1,200 per house, which would be almost $96,000. So that leaves only $4,000 to come up with to make this a viable project if we receive the grant. And so most of that theoretically would be covered by those 80 users. And so the broadband's role here really was just to be a facilitator, to bring together the various communities, to help form the coalition that is being led by the Planning District Commission of the Northern Neck. But part of making our application for the grant, the VATI grant, attractive was showing that these 6 or 7 rural Northern Neck, Middle Peninsula communities have banded together and have committed to this in a serious way. And one of the ways that application looks all the more attractive and shows that we're serious about having some skin in the game is the minimum to participate with this grant was $25,000. So if we get the grant, and I hope you're still with me, everybody, if we get the grant and we build out this project, it will have taken away probably my number 1, 2, and 3 top targets for broadband expansion. Having studied the county as the broadband authority, we know where these pockets are. Those were my 3 biggest targets, which isn't to say there isn't a 4, 5, and 6. We can go for this grant again next year. But because of that, the Middlesex SURFs program that we've called it, which is this low-interest loan that the board agreed to fund so that we could go to these same communities and say, hey, it's still an expensive job to build out this project, but if you're saying you can afford it, you just can't afford it all at once, here's a low-interest loan. That's the $30,000 that I asked for last month, I believe. What I'm saying is if we get this grant, I'm not going to need that much money for low-interest loans because it's going to already be paid for with the grant, state funding, Atlantic Broadband money, and the individual customers themselves. So what I'm asking the board today is for a motion to lower my account for Middlesex SURFs, the low-interest loan program, from $30,000 to $10,000, freeing up $20,000 to go for the VATI grant, but then I need an additional $5,000. So I'm self-funding essentially by moving around numbers, 80% of getting into this grant, and I'm coming to the board asking for another $5,000.
Well, I'll certainly vote to put that $5,000 towards broadband. We need it in the county, and this is a very good beginning.
My question is, if you don't get the grant, then what are the numbers?
If we don't get the grant, I'll be back saying, now I've had more time knowing that I don't have the grant. And I even had someone on Facebook today ask me from Hillcrest, what's the latest on broadband? And I explained all that I just explained. And unfortunately to that person in Hillcrest, my answer was, you're not in this year's VATI grant, but you're one of my targets, my 4, 5, or 6 for next year. Because the idea is if we're successful with this, we will be proving a model statewide that they really want to get this money out. They want to get it out in big tranches. So if we're aggregating the demand for these projects and the county or the state likes that, others are going to follow and there's going to be more competition, but we'll have the leg up because we created the model and we'll already have done the engineering on our 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 biggest targets. So in theory, if we get the money, and I'm coming around to answer your question, if we get the money, it's obvious how this works for this year, and we know what our homework is to start on for next year. But in the interim, if we don't get the money, then I'm having people like Hillcrest, who isn't in this round of VATI grant, come to me and say, well, what about us? And I say, you need to go and set up a meeting with your neighbors, and the Middlesex Broadband Authority will come to your meeting, but you need to aggregate the demand in your community and show that you're the next serious target to participate in this so that we can talk about the actual construction cost for your particular community. Because Atlantic Broadband can give us very good numbers. They've been requested to put these things in by individuals in the past, so they know the numbers. But let's imagine we all lived on the same cul-de-sac, and you call and they say to get to your house, Wayne, here's what it's going to cost. And you're going to get fiber to go past all the rest of us. But by yourself, you don't want to pay that. But if we get all of your neighbors together in at a picnic and we talk about, hey, if everybody chips this much in with Middlesex Broadband Authority working Atlantic Broadband on the other side, we get them to chip in some, and that's how we aggregate private, public, and personal, individual homes into a place where that project goes from completely unfeasible when they tell you 60,000 by yourself to now I'm telling you 2,000, 2,000, 2,000, but I need all of the neighbors to come together and then leverage the Atlantic Broadband money too. So that's where, even if I said to you 2,000, you're like, I can pay 2,000 over 2 years, but I don't have it right now. That's where Middlesex SURFs comes in and says, all right, we've got it down from 60 to 2,000. We're getting it not just to Wayne's house, but the whole of Hillcrest Road. And on top of that, for those of you that want a low interest loan, that's where I still have that money. I won't be able to tell you if, in your scenario, we don't get the grant, am I coming back asking to go back up to 30 and give the 5,000 back? I doubt it. I think I over-asked there. But I'm not going to use that money unless I need to. And I don't want it just sitting out in a pool if we start proving that we only need about 5,000 a year. So I'm going to know better next year after the grant and after I've done some Middlesex SURFs meetings out in the community what the real number is.
Question, I understand where you've got one customer in the neighborhood and it would cost $60,000 to run the cable just to them, but with the aggregate you've got a different picture. Do we have any other neighborhoods that are underserved that maybe that one house would have been $5,000 and with the aggregate of the $1,200 that Atlantic Broadband allocates for each new customer could make it happen? Was I halfway clear with that question?
Try it again, just because
Okay.
I think I misunderstood.
You've got a neighbor, got somebody that wants cable. Let's just say the road, I think it's Pine Crest or Pine Top, right at the base of the bridge.
Okay.
Those homes are not served.
Right.
You've got the campground, you got the highway, that cable is just right there. It's just yards away from those people. And I've got friends up there that say they can't get cable. It would seem to me, with that dozen or so houses, that just if all of them went together and said, Atlantic Broadband, let's take the 1,200 for each of these houses, can't you make it happen, that we could reach those people without having to touch anything else. That's
Yeah, what I'd like to do, if it makes sense to everybody, I've been asking the community directly who wants broadband, and people don't think it's real. They're like, what's this guy gonna do? They don't even know necessarily that it's a supervisor that's behind it on the broadband authority. It just occurs to me, you're getting feedback from your constituents about broadband. In the September meeting, can we have a broadband authority update in earnest where Kevin and I sort of show you all of what we've done to figure out where the demand pockets are? But can we also ask as an action item for each of you in your district to tell us where you know it's bad? That would help us.
That little neighborhood is so easy to me.
Everywhere.
I don't know why that would happen.
And I know Jamaica, I mean, and the problem there, honestly, it's you have these long runs and 1-2 houses.
Yeah, no, that's
And it's that's where it's the worst for the most part. But wherever you think you're hearing a pocket, like Waterview is one that's on our target list, because there are a number out there, and they're currently being served with towers and wireless from across the river. We think we have another solution for places, I mean, actually just Waterview, maybe Hillcrest is another example. But what I'd like to do is try to be more succinct next month and give you an update on some of these areas that we're looking at. But if you wouldn't mind all taking an action item to, prior to next month's meeting, send me what you know from years of constituents talking about broadband, where the problem areas are, and I'll be able to address that in the meeting next month, where I can show you, yep, we've heard about that one, yep, or no, so glad you reached out. Who do you know on that lane that would be potentially one of these people that would be a picnic maker and bring their neighbors in? Because that's the key part, is getting people to understand we need you to be the vocal advocate in your individual neighborhood. Find the 5 or 6 other people in your neighborhood that want this solved as well. Set up a picnic, invite Kevin and I, and we'll explain this all to everybody, because this isn't going to be just money from heaven, from the federal government. The only way it works from Virginia is if we get this VATI grant, and after that, we're on our own. We need locals to come tell us they want it and they're willing to work for it.
All right, so we'll entertain that, you and Kevin, in the September meeting.
And, Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a formal motion that we authorize an additional $5,000 to the Middlesex Broadband Authority.
I don't know if you're taking that from Mr. Mansfield, but
Oh, I'm sorry.
just teasing. Was yours in the form of a motion?
She does a much better job.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I did not catch.
He didn't say motion, but he
Okay.
said he favored it.
All right. So authorizing an additional $5,000 with the understanding that $20,000 of a previous $30,000 authorization will also be part of the VATI grant buy-in, totaling $25,000.
Very good, we have a motion.
And I second it.
Duly second. Any discussion?
Yeah, Heather, as the chair of the Broadband Authority, is it appropriate for me to vote on this? I'm going to abstain today, and I would like you to give me an answer maybe by next month.
I think it'll pass even without you. I just have that feeling.
But I've been confronted about my conflicts, and now I'm very sensitive to it.
I don't know. You don't have any personal interest in the VATI grant, correct?
I live in Middlesex County. I want to see us improve.
But you have no financial interest.
No,
but
I
I'll
don't.
be happy to look into it. I don't believe there would be any conflict based on the conflict statute. But I'll look into it for you.
Appreciate that.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to point out that this VATI grant that John and the Broadband Authority have jumped in on, is the deadline is coming up. I'm glad that we're participating. It's in the news a lot for funding. So if people see state funding levels, and this is an opportunity, I just want people to know that Middlesex is right in there participating in that. And the other aspect of this, as Mr. Coons mentioned, was one of the things that will make this work is when communities, neighborhoods, small groups of people pull it together and say, you know, we want to make it work, and the communication, and I think that's something that Middlesex does really well. So the potential for success here, I think, is pretty good.
Very good.
And I'm not to beat a dead horse, but there's some urgency in letting us know those communities' names, because we're working under the assumption that we're going to get this grant, which means now's the time to be working on 2021. I was able to get Bennett Farms in under the, I mean, our deadline was today because we had to do public comment, and then September 3rd it gets submitted. So we were operating under the assumption that we would get this vote passed because we had to, but I want to start getting ready for next year so that I'm not just sneaking the Bennett Farms under the radar the last minute, but I'm actually whipping ABB to do more engineering.
Gotcha. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none. So
Susan, I
ordered.
abstained.
Speaking of Susan, we have a lease agreement to deal with the Lawson Trust for the wings, wheels, and keels. Have you got something to talk to us about?
Betty just asked me to let y'all know that the lease in the board packet is the same exact lease agreement that's been in there for years that y'all have approved and signed off on. For the wings, wheels, and...
So we need action to approve that, and the chair will entertain a motion to enter into the lease with the Lawson Trust that is exactly like what we've done in years past.
I'll make that motion for the lease.
Second.
Motion duly seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none. So ordered. All right, Susan, you're back on the hot seat again with appointments to boards and commissions.
All right. There are 3 citizens asking to be reappointed to the positions that they currently hold. And then one gentleman is asking to be appointed for the first time to fill the unexpired term of Stephen Richardson, who resigned from the Planning Commission, I think, in June. And that term runs through March 31st of 2022.
Well, I can speak to the new person because it's someone that I approached. It's an individual that has good community interest, and he's done his homework to find out what's involved, and he's not just saying I'll do it without finding out what the time requirements and so on it will be. That's Bev Butler. What is your pleasure?
I think we can move to fill the, make the commission appointments to the boards and commissions as submitted.
We can do the new one and the replacements all at the same time. Okay. And a motion?
Seconded.
Duly seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none. So ordered. All right, Matthew, you got some budget supplement requests to go over with us?
Yes, sir. 2020-6 and 2020-7 budget supplement requests. The first relatively small one is some educational supplies that 4-H and the Extension Service had bought at the end of the previous year. They had an unspent balance, and we would like to ask that you appropriate that from our fund balance to cover those expenses on their behalf. And the second one's going to take a little bit more explanation. Do you want to handle them independently or together, Mr. Chairman?
We've sort of gotten in the habit of handling them together,
Okay.
so if you'd like to give us that rundown.
2020-07 is quite a bit larger. It's a $90,000 request, and it takes a little bit of explanation. 4 years ago, we set off on a program of helping the fire departments in our community, Deltaville, Hartfield, Urbana, and Waterview, replace their self-contained breathing apparatus. It was a program that we implemented, and we've been funding it steadily along the way through the capital improvements program. And we had intended to fund the last installment of that plan through in the spring when we got our revenue numbers in and we expected a surplus. Of course, the board realizes that we did have a tax increase on real estate tax rate, so that was unexpected revenue coming in June that would offset the cost of the $90,000 needed to complete the self-contained breathing apparatus program. We did not include the last installment in the capital improvements plan that we adopted back in January, with the understanding that we would probably fund this in the spring once we had our numbers in. It is my recommendation that we do so. This is the last installment of the self-contained breathing apparatus program. Urbana generously waited to go last. They have recently provided some data from the vendor. There's going to be a cost increase on the self-contained breathing apparatus imminent, and they would like to go ahead and purchase those. And we are asking for a budget supplement request to go ahead and complete that program the way we had planned, but due to oversight largely on our part, we didn't get it funded in the spring before the end of the last fiscal year.
And for the public that hadn't been involved in some of these discussions, this will mean that all the fire departments have the same breathing apparatus, so that when 2 and 3 departments respond to a fire, the tanks are interchangeable. We've had problems in the past where they didn't, some had this and some had that, and it didn't work. And that's the reason, the primary driver behind the board wanting to fund these. And further, Urbana has been very nice in being last in line, and also in housing the rescue squad for us as things have changed there. So the chair's not going to make a motion, but the chair feels strongly that we need to move positively on this.
I move that we approve all budget supplement requests as seen in pages 87 and 88 of the agenda.
I'll second it.
Motion duly seconded. Any discussion?
Yes. Are there no adapters that can adapt one breathing apparatus to another?
We're told that they were not. They were just not compatible. It's like putting a Chevrolet motor in a Ford. It's just yeah, but no.
Good way to ruin Ford.
now. Plus the fact I think a lot of this stuff was aging out, and there were issues there. So
that was another issue that I would have brought up, Mr. Chairman. When we implemented this program, there was one, and I will not name them, that were using very old tanks. And of course, all of the fire departments were very gracious in saying, y'all go first, because y'all need them the most, and we'll hold back and wait for Urbana on that at least a bit.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, so ordered. Madam County Attorney.
No, you've given me quite the task list, and I'm continuing to work on that, and I should have some proposed ordinances and revisions for your review by next month, is my goal.
Thank you, ma'am. And we're sorry for your loss.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
County Administrator, County Administrator update, please. Matthew.
And you saw how short Heather was.
Not so lucky with me, sir. I'm from North Carolina. I can't get done as quick as she does. I've got 3 items I want to bring to the board's attention, and the first was at your placed at your seat. I actually received this document this morning, so I apologize for it not going out in your packet, but we literally received them this morning from Team Fishel and Dominion Energy. This is an easement for underground power service to go to the Maritime Museum. It's an easement that runs along Jackson Creek Road and then down the side property line to the south of the property. I've looked over the plat. I have no concerns whatsoever, and would recommend the board authorize the chairman and myself to sign and execute the easement pending Heather's review. Heather's just got this today and hadn't had a chance to look it over. But it appears to be pretty standard underground power easement from Virginia Power.
So the Maritime Museum's overhead service is now going underground?
That is the plan, yes, sir.
Who's initiating this, Matt? Is it Dominion that's doing this for their purposes?
My contact has been with Leslie, the team official, who's been contracted by Dominion to get these easements.
So Dominion is working on a project for their own benefit. This isn't the Maritime Museum saying, you know what, it would look better if we brought this under. This is...
You know, I can't answer if the Maritime Museum didn't approach them first. I don't know.
All right.
But we're the property owner, so we have to approve the easement. And all I'm asking for tonight, or today, is authorization for the chairman and I to sign this pending the review of the county attorney.
Also move.
Second.
Motion duly seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none. So ordered.
Thank you, sir. The next item I had is we received a request from Greg Harrow and our superintendent regarding the maintenance facility that the school system's constructing over here beside the practice field at the high school. They do wish to have a sink installed in the bay, so as they work on equipment, they have an ability to wash their hands. That's cascading into needing a pump and haul permit because they don't have a drain field that they're going to empty into. They're basically planning to fill up a tank and pump and haul until sewer's provided in Saluda, which, knock on wood, hopefully will be by August 2024. I'll keep saying that. In any event, they do need permission from the board to go on a pump and haul. That's a requirement that we have with the health department. All pump and haul requests have to be approved by this board first, and I would recommend we grant them approval for the pump and haul.
Just from a practical standpoint, does this have some sort of electrical monitoring on it that lets them know when to call to have it pumped?
The tank, the septic tank will have a high water alarm.
Okay,
and they'll
okay, that's fine.
notify
I just had a question. If it's like anything else, somebody's got to remember to call. Okay, you're looking for a motion
Yes,
to
sir.
approve pump and haul.
So moved.
John said it, I second
It
it.
was a tie.
All right.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing
Along
none.
that line, the
So-
school has asked that we waive the building and permit fees related to the maintenance facility, which is our practice.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, so ordered.
The last thing I wanted to mention to the board, and I'm really happy that John Scott brought this matter up on public comment, because we had been looking at, he approached me a couple weeks ago about the signage around the courthouse complex. Many of us have been to other county complexes around the Commonwealth and meetings and whatnot, and the one that just sticks out at me is Hanover county complex. It's strewn out, spread out over a fairly large area at Hanover Courthouse, and they have, I think, really good signage. When John brought this to my attention several weeks ago, when we were meeting over at the new registrar's office, I thought it was a great idea, and it's something that we could incorporate into the project cost of getting everything situated for planning, building, and zoning downstairs. Once that's complete, I can get some prices on providing new signage. I'm out front right often, and I can't tell you how much John is right. A number of people come in and they'll go to the registrar's office to pay their taxes and or look for the courts. Some people will actually show up dressed in a suit. I'm like, that's not us, that's the new one behind us. So having some signage that kind of maps out and incorporates a better flow for citizens' understanding on where they can park and where they need to be, I think is something that we can accommodate, and I'd be happy to get some cost to do so.
So that we get to your third item, I was going to bring that up in new business.
Okay, well, that was my third item, so you can have
I
that.
thought the YMCA.
Oh, that is the fourth item. Thank you.
Before you move away from this, perhaps something just under glass at each office, be it the registrar's, be it the Bonnie's office, be it this with the red dot, you are here, and then shows where the parking is, what the route is to the registrar's office or to whatever else.
Yeah.
That can be done very tastefully and then not be a sign that is out in front of the historic complex that might not be as pretty
I
as
agree
what
with
we'd
the
like.
map, and I think Mr. Scott also made a good point. It needs to be at the old courthouse and
Yep.
the new
Yep.
courthouse in particular, as
Yep.
well as the registrar's office, and show the orthogonal view of the whole campus.
Any place that visitors come and expect services from the county could have one of
Yep.
these under glass, and it would direct them to where they wanted to be.
Well, and that's in the spirit of Hanover County's directory.
Yep.
They provide, I think, a very good way of directing
Google
people
Earth.
to,
Oh, dear.
yeah, every meeting.
We couldn't
John,
have a
this is
meeting,
John's
we
fault.
couldn't
You
have a
reminded
meeting
me.
without Google Earth.
John's fault.
Well, Matt,
Yes.
nice to be
Yeah.
up down here. When you are reviewing this with the planning office and developing a signage plan, would you also include in that signs that can be removed?
Absolutely.
Because these blue signs that are out there, I do think those are harsh and detract.
Okay.
And I'm not sure that we have a big skateboarding problem at the courthouse grounds. So just
Well,
less is more sometimes.
We'll take a comprehensive review of all of our signage.
Thank you.
But I had always wondered why you couldn't park out front on the weekends, and it was because vendors were coming and setting up there.
That's
So
right.
If you can't skateboard, you might as well get a sign that says, "Get the hell off my lawn." too.
Yeah.
The last item, and this is one that we briefly touched on during our budget discussions and our work sessions, is several years ago, the board had discussed the possibility of transferring the Wilton Creek School property to the YMCA. They lease it. We have kind of a lease situation with them. And there are a number of improvements that they've built on this property, not reflected on Google Earth. But we had broached the subject with YMCA, several of their board members and their executive director about possibly subdividing the eastern third of the property off, the county retaining the eastern third for a variety of potential uses, and then conveying over the main portion of the tax map parcel that used to be Wilton Creek School to the YMCA. Before we, and that has been discussed several times in work sessions, but I don't recall us, the board, ever taking action to direct staff to see about making that happen. The first step would be obviously subdividing and doing a surveying off the portion of the property the county would wish to keep. And simply, I guess, bringing this issue up in a board meeting so I can get some direction from the board. Is it something that we want to do? It was discussed.
The YMCA has a tax status that would preclude them from paying real estate taxes on that anyway, if it was even in their ownership, wouldn't they?
It really depends. I think it comes down to a call that the treasurer or the commissioner of revenue make regarding 501c3 tax exempt status. It's not a blanket.
Okay.
So.
But they're likely to pursue it if they haven't already, you know,
Right.
the exemption.
Well, county property, obviously, we're not going to tax ourselves, so as long as we own it, we're not getting anything off of it. I was wondering if a change would.
Well, I mean, why is this coming up? I mean, what's the purpose?
We got an email this past week while I was in Seattle from the executive director and the regional director regarding a maintenance service contract. No, it was a facilities maintenance agreement on their stormwater facilities that they had to put in. Well, we as the property owner have to sign that, and the question was raised in that email from the director and the regional director that whatever happened with all of that discussion. And it's just been something, I think, on the back of discussions and budget work sessions, but nothing the board has ever really directed staff to.
Well, Madam County Attorney, could the bequest of this property, the potential bequest of this property to the YMCA be written in such a fashion that if they ever were not using the property, it would revert back to the county?
We could draft something to that effect, yes, sir.
I mean, the lease is probably forever and ever and ever, and so giving it to them, and they have to give it back if they're not going to use it anymore, accomplishes the same thing. But I'd like for us to have that option if they weren't going to use the property at some point in the future. And I hope they continue using it forever and ever, but
Yep.
I don't always get what I want.
Will this property, well, it would be accessible to the sewer line?
Absolutely. Some of the, I'm going to go ahead and.
Well, whose obligation is that, the landowner or the lessee, or is that unknown?
It depends on the contract.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the discussion that has happened with the eastern portion of the property has been having this old ball field, old T-ball field, I believe it was, available for Little League use and other type of uses there, but it's also property that could be available to the Broadband Authority, Water Authority, or HRSD's use for implementation and deployment of infrastructure.
Wayne, the question you asked about why it's being brought up, we're getting pulled into something we don't really want to be pulled into. We're dealing with that wastewater is what I'm gathering.
Well, it's the stormwater and some of the other stormwater issues that we have with VDOT go through the eastern portion of the property that would remain with the county.
My personal feeling is if we are not going to have any we've got ownership, we're not exercising any control over this property, we ought to look into having the surveying done and see what's involved with transferring it to them with a clause that it reverts back to us in the event they have to stop using it. Because it's soft costs of our administrating this, that, and the other thing when we have to get involved in wastewater and whatever else. And if it's their property, we don't have to deal with that. So that's just my opinion. Do you need a motion to do something?
I would feel more comfortable pursuing, getting Gordon to do, and Gordon's our consultant engineer and surveyor, getting him to pursue a survey with the board motion to that effect.
And that would also entail an expense, too.
He's not going to do the survey for free.
Right. I mean, it's a considerable expense.
No, it probably wouldn't be. I mean, for something like this, I would expect it to be less than $3,000.
I mean, I could have got him to do it for nothing, but Matt doesn't pull the same.
I try to get him to do a lot for free.
So we're talking about the survey would be in the range of 3,000.
I would say
less than 5,000.
Considerably less.
Okay.
I'm gonna.
All right.
Yeah.
I just want to know the range.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to move that we authorize the county administrator to pursue surveying and the county attorney to pursue a drawn-up lease or transfer that acknowledges the notion that if the YMCA is no longer using it, it reverts back to the county.
And there may be some other process,
and associated processes.
I mean, you may have to hold a public hearing before you do it.
Yep.
Things of that nature. But we've talked about this for about 3 years now. I think it started with a discussion in budget work sessions between Jack Miller and Bob LeBeau. And Chip, you may have been in.
I remember them. I don't know that I was.
But we never really did anything with it, and it just never got pushed to the forefront. So it's something that y'all want to do.
They're leasing the whole thing, right?
Well, my interpretation of lease is they're leasing everything west of that white line. I think an argument could be made that we retained control over the eastern portion of the property. This came up when Charlie looked at trying to house the rescue squad on the
Right, I remember that. I remember that.
There was a big dispute.
They wouldn't let them.
Well,
I mean, it didn't transfer. From my understanding,
yeah,
somebody didn't want that.
I had a harsher interpretation of what we could do,
and
I say we could.
Right, but
well, if we're going to be transferring ownership to them, then we can just say what part it goes and what part it doesn't. And I think that
it wouldn't be a question at all.
I have said before that where we do a sweetheart deal, either with the Maritime Museum or the YMCA or whatever, that any surplus property that's involved with that the county subsequently needs would be able to be clawed back. And we've talked about that on numerous occasions.
Did we get a second, or are we in discussion?
We are out of order because we don't have a second. But I allowed that to happen. So we've got a motion from John to move forward with surveying 3,000. Duly seconded. Now, since we've got all the discussion behind us, I presume that we have no discussion at this point.
I'd actually just like to acknowledge that I called Chip Holt out of order while he was in a neck brace.
That's role reversal a little bit.
Hearing no further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, so ordered.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right, moving right along. Any supervisors have unfinished business that they'd like to address at this point?
I have new business.
We'll get to that.
Okay, I didn't know you were bifurcating.
Hearing none, we will move on to new business, and Mr. Koontz has allowed us how he has some new business for us.
Yes, I wonder if it would make sense for us to formally motion to have the county administrator explore signage project as part of his overall construction project downstairs and his continuation of what we've done on the registrar's office. Would that help you, Matt, if we gave you a clear direction? Because I think
we've already got money in the budget for doing it.
So I think it makes sense that we pursue a motion. Does anybody want to make it, or do you want me to make it? Okay. I move that we authorize the county administrator to pursue the signage, the John Scott signage project for the county buildings. And as part of the reconstruction of our offices project that's ongoing.
And I'd like to second that.
Motion duly seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none. So ordered.
Second item that maybe doesn't require a motion, but I'd like to pick up Lud Kimbrough's recommendation or suggestion from the Deltaville Maritime Museum about the ferry. I'm guessing that a lot of these multi-use task type places are very focused on the things that they know how to do and maybe aren't aware of our ferry heritage over here, and it may be a really interesting and cool thing.
Like a chain ferry.
I'd like to make sure that gets relayed to that consultant. I don't know that we need a motion for that, but I think that's a neat idea. I don't know if it's feasible or not. I can do that after the meeting. I'd also like to just sort of informally poll the board. In my district of Hartfield, I get a lot, arguably an inordinate amount of complaints about junk cars and junk boats. And I know we've talked a little bit about junk cars. There are ordinances in surrounding counties that allow us, allow those counties to do a little bit more than what we currently do with our ordinance. My experience on the complaints that I've received and that I've put into the zoning planning departments for them to look at and see if there is some action they need to be taking. It's taken over a year and we're still not getting anything. Our ordinances don't have enough teeth, in my opinion. And I think there is a solid argument to be made for you can go too far with these ordinances when you start telling people they're not cutting their grass correctly. But when people are leaving multiple cars and boats in the same place at the entrance to communities, it's disruptive to the view shed in a way that, I've heard from the community that we don't like solar panels, some of us. I've heard from the community from even more that we don't like junkyards that are being left to grow and nothing's being done about it. So I'd like to hear from each of you if you would think it makes sense for us to look at some other localities near us that are somewhat similar to us that have slightly tighter car and boat junk ordinances that would allow us to respond to our constituents. And I don't know if you guys are hearing it, and gals, the same in your communities, but in Hartfield I have a problem, and I'd like to make it so that staff can address it.
Well, if Heather
more
would
quickly.
refresh my memory, we had this discussion last month, didn't we? And
I
we're-
sent you a memo about inoperative
Yeah.
vehicles with surrounding
We
jurisdictions.
have a junkyard ordinance. What we
Correct.
don't have is an ordinance about inoperative vehicles. And we had a lot of discussion. It's fair to say that people have a couple of inoperative vehicles as parts vehicles for, a lot of this can be handled with simple screening without, but I think that we're already trying to work on the inoperative vehicle situation from the
I
discussions that
guess
we had last
maybe
month.
what I'm adding is, in one of my instances in particular, it goes to boats too.
Well, today I got an email dealing with boats, and that's the first one the first complaint on
And some of these,
junk
what
boats that
happens
I've heard.
is you'll have one complainant, and then you start hearing about the same person over and over. Not person, but the property that's out of spec, whatever you want to call it. What I'd like to do is have Heather come to us next meeting with maybe one or two ordinances that address both car and boats that are decaying on properties and that aren't being screened from the public view, that we can consider and amend as we see fit. But I have a problem in Hartfield that I need to tell my constituents I'm either able to get something changed or I haven't been.
I'd like to add a little bit to what you just said, John. I got a letter from Middlesex Metals, and the problem just got worse. Now, if you have an untitled vehicle which you want to get junked, you used to be able to do VSA 40 form. Well, that's fine. You can still do the VSA 40 form, but now the Division of Motor Vehicles is saying, but you've also got to pay us some money to do that. I would like to raise hell about that, to be perfectly candid with you. because that will disrupt our program, and I'd like our representative, congressional representative, to pick up the ball and say no to that additional cost. But I did go further. I did not include votes, by the way, in what I wrote. And with everybody's permission, I'd like to read this. Do I have everybody's permission, especially the chairman?
Yes, sir.
Sounds good.
Read on.
I would like to suggest the following county ordinance. And by the way, as I'd like you to write it because you always seem to do a good job. Not him. Starting on the day this ordinance passes, if it would pass, and for the next 365 days thereafter, owners of all unlicensed vehicles housed in Middlesex County will receive $40 from the county if delivered to any approved Middlesex County disposal site for disposal with proper proof of ownership per the Virginia Division of Motor Vehicles requirements. Number 2, if the above disposal site is charged a fee by the Virginia Division of Motor Vehicles for processing a properly executed title or VSA 40 form, Middlesex County will reimburse that disposal site fully for the DMV charges. 1 year from the organization date of this ordinance, all vehicles housed on Middlesex properties except those vehicles listed for sale by licensed dealers must have a current Virginia license. Second, the above listed $40 stated in paragraph 1 will no longer be offered by Middlesex County. C, reimbursement as stated in the above paragraph 2 will remain in effect. Number 4, whether this ordinance is approved or not, Middlesex County will immediately pursue all available legislative avenues to have the above DMV charges to disposal sites removed. And by the way, you can throw junk boats in, the same type things. I'm not offering this as asking you to vote on it because it's very poorly written, but it gives you the idea that I'm progressing down, and I'll be glad to talk to Heather between now and.
But the bottom line is you'd like the county to reward citizens for junking a car.
Yes.
Excuse me? I think we can certainly take that under advisement and maybe work on smoothing that out a little bit and see if we can, see if it'll fit the form or something that can be acted on.
No comment.
Well, it's my understanding that the board has asked Ms. Lewis to continue working on the ordinances relating to either delinquent cars or the screening of property that's housing delinquent cars and boats.
Right, and you and I, Kathy, you and I have had some discussions. I think that where you're dealing with inoperative vehicles that people are keeping for parts vehicles or whatever else, I think screening is really the answer to it. I don't think it needs to be much more than just not visible from the street, because people have, I think they ought to have the right to do that.
Yeah.
But then you've got folks that just collect junk. I've got one in my neighborhood. There's several campers. There's a wrecked airplane. And I can't tell you how many cars and trucks back in there. And we don't have anything that addresses that.
Paramilitary
vehicle? No. All of that's properly garaged. I'll be picking on that.
So it's just for Ms. Lewis' benefit, though. It's clear that we want to the screening boats and cars.
Well, we didn't talk
ordinance.
about boats last time, we just strictly talked
Right,
about cars.
but now we have.
Yeah.
And now we're going to ask that you consider what, because Mr. Mansfield, I think, has 3 different aspects to that. You know, having to do with screening, the inoperable, and then an incentive program. So those might be different things. With the idea of moving forward, is that clear enough direction or no?
That's difficult for me to even answer. So just, I guess, let me try saying it back to you. You want an ordinance that requires you to put your junk boats, however we define that. I'm not clear that the code will give us that definition, but I'll look again. And you want that behind a screen along with junk vehicles. And you also now want to pay people to remove their vehicles. Is that instead of taxing them for their junk vehicles?
No,
Yeah,
no.
I think Pete has suggested that, and
Okay.
we need to maybe
Yeah,
understand. I'd like to digest that more than just at the end of the meeting, listening to it 5 minutes. I'd like to digest it, but I mean,
Sorry,
I
that's
see
right.
some clear.
Oh, yeah,
Well, I
I
think-
don't need to digest it.
I think what we need
I can tell you that.
is what are our options so that we can get a pack, that's why I say separating them.
Okay.
So this is not, I mean, there must be samples of other jurisdictions. Is that where we are from 1 month from today?
Yeah, I can say that I've been working on the inoperable vehicles now. I sent you quite a lengthy packet at
Yes.
the last meeting with numerous examples, one of which I would recommend is Amherst County. They have a very detailed inoperable vehicle ordinance because they have a big problem up there, clearly, as you read their ordinance. And they did not give people money to remove the vehicle, they taxed them if they didn't remove them. So there's a code section that allows you to tax the individual, but they focused at the big offenders, so those who had 50 vehicles, 100 vehicles, 200 vehicles. Basically, these people were running old junkyards, landfills essentially with vehicles and not removing them is what I read. I have not found an ordinance and looking at numerous that have given people money to remove vehicles. I can look and see if you're authorized to do that. Again, I've read the statutes quite a bit, I'm not seeing it.
I think Pete is asking you to see if we're authorized so that
Sure.
we can consider it.
Yeah.
I think I'm, just speaking for myself, more interested in the model where the individual is taxed for deciding that they're going to have something that is out of spec in terms of 50 vehicles. To me, the number's probably closer to 5, but that's what we'll debate once we
Okay.
see the ordinance. And if you want to use Amherst as the example, I'm behind that. But I think we just want to get it to where we have a ordinance that we're considering, where we can hear the 5 points of views on the matter, and then we'll tweak it from there. But I would like to see us move forward in
Yes.
progress towards a place where we can have an ordinance, because I've got some areas in my community that are.
John, you'd asked for comments, I think, from all of us with regards to this, so I would just say that our community is based a lot on tourism, whether it's people that have cottages or boats or visitors, or as Mr. Kimbrough pointed out, the Chesapeake Bay article, how many people that reached. We have to be considered, not what do we want, what do our visitors want to see when they come here? And I think that's important, and I don't want to get in the way of anybody's personal property rights to have a vehicle to use for parts. But when you've got 2 vehicles that are on the road and 5 to 7 to 10 that are not, I'm not sure. That's where I think an ordinance would help us to be able to draw that balance between rights and what we want to present ourselves as a county. Because if you ever want to look at something, and I'm not suggesting this, but Bath County knows where their money's coming from. That's where the homestead is. And I dare you to go up there and find a dilapidated structure or an abandoned vehicle sitting right where you can see it. I dare you. You can't find them. They're not up there. Those people, they don't put up with that. And by no means, I'm not advocating that. But that's the extreme going the other way.
Yeah, I think the other thing, Chip, is not only is tourism important for visitors, but if you look at so many of our community, they started as tourists and visitors, and then they decided, yeah, this wouldn't be a bad place to retire.
Yep.
Or I want to get a second home.
Guilty.
And I don't think we should limit that to those people that can afford to be on the water. I think some of the places that we're junking up are affecting the property values and the resale activity in and around those communities that aren't necessarily on our waterfront, which is a really big deal here because we have a lot of really valuable homes on water, and then we have a lot of really much less valuable homes that are not being improved and are not turning over. And you know, and then finally, this is a question of tax base. If our property values are being allowed to diminish, then so are our taxes. And so where does the tax come from? Less and less people. So I think there's a number of reasons why we should be looking at this. We are looking at this. And Heather, thank you for all the research you've done, and I look forward to seeing an ordinance that we can consider next month.
Without everybody having, do we pretty much have a consensus?
Yeah, I'm very happy with that. But I would like some kind of action today, if possible, on getting asking our legislator, Keith Hodges, of course, to go into whether the Department of Motor Vehicles should be charging to process.
Would you be willing to make a contact on Keith and ask him about that? I'm a little bit hesitant to send a motion from the board. You do this, or like I'd rather ask him.
What are his thoughts?
Yeah, I'd rather feel him out on it because there may be some reasons here that we don't understand.
And I'd like to keep my powder dry with Keith until I've at least read the thing. I need to read what those components are. I don't understand. It's news to me. So I need to digest before I'm ready to do action.
I'd like to see us sort of unofficially talk to him about it.
By the way, I do have the letter that telling Judy Aldridge
Of Middlesex Metals.
Yes.
Can you share that with Matt and have him circulate that to all of us?
Sure.
Or I guess Susan?
Yeah, I was gonna say, that would be
Yeah,
Susan.
I better go that way with it.
No, we're the wrong way.
What happened?
All right, do we have any other items of new business? Are we okay? We're going to incorporate boats in the thinking on this?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Sure, I'll see what I can do.
All right, no other new business. We'll move on to supervisors' comments and reports. And I'll go ladies first tonight.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I just, airport committee meeting, and the committee does a fine job and is doing a better job of including comment from the public. So I appreciate that part on that effort on their part. And also there's a subcommittee, and Mr. Holt and I are both on a subcommittee, excuse me, that's not right. It's not a subcommittee of the airport committee. It's
screening committee.
It's a committee to review the bids from consultants to study an airport authority. And the only thing I would caution people is that anytime you do something like that, you get a lot of misconstrued and misinformation. If you have questions about the study about an airport authority, to please contact either one of us or Mrs. Muncy, just to see where we are before we get too far ahead of ourselves. I also attended Middle Peninsula Planning District Commission, learned a lot of things, and Wayne was there too. One was interesting though is funds for to provide loans for correcting septic issues. There seems to be more demand than there is loans, and so we want to try to solve that problem on a regional level. And there's also a pilot survey that'll be going on just south of us, not up here in Middlesex, but about the loss of the value of some forest land right along the rivers, which I think is going to be some interesting information there in terms of salt water and other things. I also attended the Rural Coastal Virginia Summit at Gloucester Point, BIMS. The mission there is to protect the water, protect the land, and build jobs in the region. And the idea there is with our delegate Keith Hodges is to develop a regional group with common interests, and that is rural coastal, to help us in the General Assembly draw people's attention to what makes us different. We don't have a lot of pavement. Our stormwater issues are different. We have a lot of agriculture, we have a lot of water, actually. So that policies from the General Assembly at least are, we can have some effect on. So we don't have negative impact because legislation is written because of a problem in Fredericksburg or, Richmond or something like that. So that's my report.
Thank you, ma'am. John?
I had a similar meeting with Louis Lawrence and learned a lot of the same stuff.
Please use the
Yeah, I'm moving back. I could feel you coming, Tom. But I strongly recommend, and I know Wayne, you've been, and Chip and Pete, you've been doing this for a long time, but I need to go back to the PDC more often and get updates on the things that they're working on. And even the Northern Neck PDC and how much they're helping with broadband, it's just a great reminder that they are a resource and they have their ears to the ground. But I can tell you, I've had people in the PDC say they really don't believe we're going to do sewer. They said they've been hearing about it for so long. So I look forward to defying that logic and proving to them that we are very serious about our infrastructure development, and it is happening. I also want to invite you on August 20th. I will be speaking at the Local in Irvington, Virginia. It's a restaurant up there, and the topic, and I'm not the only one speaking, so there is a reason to actually come. It's about offshore drilling off the coast of Virginia and seismic blasting. And I'll be discussing in part the resolution that this board passed in opposition to any such exploration and the impacts it would have on our economy, our tourism, et cetera, et cetera. And other than that, I just want to thank the board for your support on Broadband Authority. Kevin and I and our board are working hard at it. There's a lot for us to have learned to get to the point we're at, and it really is helpful to be able to call each of you and talk to you about this, talk to you about it here, and take thoughtful questions from you. And I would again implore you to take the action item of identifying communities within your district that you know that I might not know, and send those directly to me so that I can continue to make my list more robust. And that's my report.
Thank you, sir. Well, this neck surgery has sort of sidelined me for a good part of this month, and with any luck, it'll only be 3 more weeks before I can get rid of this and start driving again. But I did, as I mentioned earlier, Kathy and I had a good meeting with the Commissioner of Revenue and the Treasurer, and I think that was borne out by a very good discussion here tonight for us to get a better handle on some of the newer taxes that we've got that we really are just kind of juggling and are not altogether sure about. So I'm real pleased with the outcome and their attendance and their willingness to discuss openly with us everything that they felt comfortable with. When we send them what other counties are doing, then we'll see, exactly what we can do without worrying about repercussions. So that was a good meeting that we had on the 15th. Saturday, the 27th, I was able to get my wife to drive me down to the Maritime Museum to the, what do we call it?
Heritage.
No, where they have all the vendors and everything. Farmers Market. And Matt and Betty had set up inside and were answering questions on easements and so on for the water. We sort of called it a town hall, but people could come in and talk about things and set up appointments if they wanted people to meet with them on site. So we have several of those in the wings over the next couple of weeks, and hope we get good response. Mr. Jesse.
Yeah, I attended the Middle Peninsula Alliance, and then I think it was Design 9 was the one approved for the Pomoki Net vendor, because they had different vendors, so the Design 9 was approved. And then they're still getting, for the advisory board for the Middle Peninsula Island, they're still getting nominations from different business people from the different counties. We already have some lined up for Middlesex. Middle Peninsula Planning District, Robbie Lewis, just like Kathy said, he was the one involved with the coastal forestry, where you're losing so much of that land from storms and intrusion of salt water. And also we had Jessica Rogers of the Middle Peninsula Alliance. She talked about the Gloucester County Operation Plan, the COOP, and she discussed that. They have a design way for emergency plan planning, they have a thing on that. Also, I attended the Urbana Orchard Festival Foundation meeting, and the Orchard Festival will be the November the 1st and 2nd, and everything is just going fine with that. You know, everything's going good with that. So that's about it for my committee meeting.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mansfield.
I also attended the PDC meeting with Keith Hodges. Very informative. However, not to be overly negative, which, by the way, I'm turning into more negative than I've been for a long time. We didn't discuss the problem of the overdrawing of the Potomac Aquifer. That was not discussed. That is a problem of gigantic proportion. I think probably outside of all of our knowledge here. We are taking out around 100 million gallons a day, and we're replacing, naturally, about 1 million gallon per day. So we're overdrawing it. We did mention at that meeting that the second greatest town or city in danger of flooding was Norfolk, Virginia. And that's because of land subsidence, which means the land is falling. And with the land falling, plus sea level rise, which certainly at this point can't be disputed, that is the cause of Norfolk being in the greatest danger of flooding. Now, I think we've all heard about a very ambitious program HRSD has, which is to replace the water, taking wastewater, regenerating it into pure water, which they certainly have the capability of doing, and re-injecting 100 million gallons per day into the Potomac Aquifer. That would stop land subsidence for sure, and it would stop the decreased level in the Potomac Aquifer. However, the question is, who pays for this program? And I think that the answer is that all of us that are going to be using HRSD's services for disposal of our wastewater. But guess what? The two greatest sources of use from the Potomac Aquifer are the two paper mills that are using the water, and they wouldn't have any wastewater disposal costs. So the HRSD users are going to end up paying a big price for regenerating water going back into the Potomac Aquifer.
Can I ask a question on Hampton Road Sanitation District's, it's called the SWIFT project, isn't it?
Yes, it's a SWIFT project.
Do you think that is more driven with their desire to replenish the aquifer, or is that a least objectionable way to take care of their treated water?
No, I don't think they've got I'm certainly no expert in this area, but they don't have a problem disposing of the water, the wastewater, and they're doing a good job keeping their nitrogen and phosphorus down, and I think it goes into the York River from the
So that's
Yorktown
not
plant.
really a problem?
That's not a problem.
Okay.
They are trying to answer this problem of depletion of the Potomac Aquifer, and I think it's a great answer, but it's going to be an expensive answer, and I don't know this for sure, but it appears that HRSD customers are going to be the ones that are paying for it. And we are not, by the way, I'm not a customer, but I'm going to say we.
Yet.
Yes.
Right.
HRSD customers are going to be the ones that pay for it, and they're only going to be using 60%. They are only going to be delivering 60% of this wastewater. The two paper mills are the other 40%.
Gotcha.
Thank you, and I'm sorry.
No problem. Does that conclude your comments?
That
Concludes your comments.
There's this bill.
All right. Matt's son is matriculating at the high school, and Matt had to leave to go deal with orientation and so on with him. So he asked that the closed session scheduled for the end of this session be held at the end of our evening session. So if nobody has any objection, we will make that change to the agenda. And also, I guess it's appropriate for anybody who might be waiting around for the 7 o'clock meeting to know that the discussion on amending solar panel regulations has been tabled.
The specific one, the revised application, ordinance amendment 2019-01. This is Mr. Major's application.
Right.
He is going to request that it be continued. That does not mean, no, so that would be something for the board to consider.
Right. I just wanted for anybody that was planning on being here for the 7 o'clock session, because we will have the other ordinance will be dealt with, and then we'll have the closed session after that. And then
do we need
comment.
to vote on that, Mr. Chairman?
To allow them to table it?
Yes.
Oh, yes, sir, but only once at the public hearing. You cannot do that at this time. You can do that at 7 o'clock.
I was just, for anybody here that might be waiting around until 7 for that, I wanted to let them know that that's a probability.
Mr. Chairman, on the agenda, we have a closed session for personnel matters.
Correct.
When will that occur?
We will have that at the end of the 7 o'clock session.
Okay, thank you.
Just so we can only have one closed session, otherwise we'd have to have two. At this point, we will go ahead and declare this meeting in recess to reconvene at 7 p.m. And I forgot to thank all you citizens for coming and taking part in your government. I like to do that at the beginning of each meeting and didn't do that, so thank you all for coming. A motion to continue the first one, Brian Major's request?
Yeah.
Yes, you do,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
It has been requested, you got a copy of an email from the attorney, Mr. Berry, asking that we continue the hearing on Mr. Brian Major's request. Having everybody read that, is there a motion to accept that?
I will move, so move.
I second it.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, so ordered. We will move on to the ordinance amendment 201903, and I think David Kretz will address that.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Okay. Back down one. Of course, this is an ordinance amendment that was initiated by the Board of Supervisors. It was for the purposes of moving the currently permitted solar facility uses over to a special exception use. You can see through your staff report that when we went through this, it was fairly basic and straightforward. We basically just moved these facilities over to a special exception use from the permitted use. You'll see the language in the amendment language. What we found out is that in many cases, when we went through some of these different districts, at times there were no special exception criteria developed. In some cases, there isn't even a special exception option in some of these districts, such as manufactured home and some of these other type of districts. So what we did is we just removed them where we felt that they're probably, as we go in these, they're probably just not appropriate for these districts anyway. So this is part of trying to clean this ordinance up and make it a little bit more user-friendly. The ordinance committee will be looking at this more holistically, possibly moving the special exception criteria over to into supplementary district regulations. So we make it more boilerplate and easier to follow. It seems like the public's having a hard time following it. Right now we have special exception criteria listed in each district, that currently permits it. So Matt, if you just want to briefly just scan through, I'm not gonna. Of course, the board requested this amendment. Different sections. You can just kind of slide through them, Matt. You can see conservation district's one of them that we removed it totally. Same way with drag and run. Resource husbandry, that currently has an avenue to permit these with a special exception. Those were just moved over to the special exception list. Same way with LDR, low density rural. This is the same way with agricultural district. We just moved them back over to special exception use. Village community, that has probably some of the most complex language. There again, all facilities are being removed as permitted uses and moved into special exception uses. Of course, that the recently just tabled amendment has even more language that would be incorporated into that district in the event that the board approves it. Residential, I think it's next. There again, we're not finding any appropriate use in residential, same with cluster development.
How does this apply to the residential homeowner that wants to put solar panels on their roof?
Well, I think
pass this tonight,
I think the board was fairly clear. This has been an interpretation in the past that we've allowed these. These have been coming into our office for quite a few years. We would just handle these with building permits as a rule. They're just panels on a roof or something of that nature. I thought the board was fairly clear that they didn't want to infringe on the ability for a homeowner to put a panel.
Well, I was asked about that during the break, and I just wanted to be clear.
Wouldn't
they be considered associated uses? Associate uses?
Yeah, they're
accessory uses.
In a sense, they're accessory.
They're like accoutrements added to a home, like a heat pump would be, really.
Essentially, yes. That's a good analogy. So, and I think we don't want to put that person through that process if they want to put 3 panels on their house, or 10 panels.
Well, the only thing I would say to that is that on the waterfront, if you're going to put a pier out in the water, you're going to have to get a permission, or get each one of your contiguous neighbors are going to have to get a say-so on that. And I'm not saying that needs to be part of this, but there are some examples of where you can't just do what you want to do with what's yours.
Right. There could be some limitations on it. Of course, VMRC comes into play over the waterfront. It's their water, so they control that. So, any other questions at this point?
By the way, I've got 22 panels on my boathouse.
Yeah.
But I did get permission for it.
Right. I think you probably need a building permit for it.
I did get the building permit.
Yeah. That's how it was interpreted at the time.
Yeah.
So, like I said, residential, we've moved it out of that particular district as well. Cluster development, not appropriate. Waterfront commercial, again, the special exception criteria really isn't set up for that. We removed it from that. General business, again, this is similar to village community. We have this language in there already with the stipulations. This tags in with Brian Major's request, but this is currently in place. Again, all these uses get moved over to special exception uses. Light industrial, we've moved these out. Again, there's really not any special exception criteria. If we have an applicant come forward, they can always amend the ordinance to add these in with the conditions that go with it. Manufactured home, again, we just removed it. It just wasn't appropriate.
So based on that, staff recommends approval of ordinance amendment 2019-03. Planning Commission recommended unanimously 9-0 to recommend approval of the ordinance. And that concludes my presentation, Mr. Chairman. If you have any other questions of me, I'll be glad to answer.
Any questions of our Mr. Krebs? Okay. You have a question? We'll have public comment as soon as we're done, staying by the second. Okay,
At that, I'll step back and.
Okay. At this point, I'll open the hearing for comments from the public.
This is a question, Dave, I think you can answer quickly. The areas where you have removed the use for the small solar, which would be residential, waterfront commercial, the ones you just went through, does that mean that they cannot put 3 panels on their roof anymore?
No, that's not. That's what we were just discussing.
I just don't understand.
Well, this is.
Sorry, we cannot have that.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Can't have a dialogue.
It's
I don't understand if the ordinance amendment that is still, if you could put it up there, Matt, okay, permitted use, solar energy facility, small system, removed tonight.
From special exception.
That means it's not a permitted use.
No, it's removed from needing a special exception to move forward.
The Article 9 residential doesn't have any provision for special exception.
So that would be a discussion we can have after public comment period. I apologize, but rules.
That's fine. That's fine. That's why that's one of the reasons we have you here.
Yeah. So my whole point is residential, commercial waterfront, the other ones that Dave mentioned, where it says removed by this amendment. There is no provision for special exception. And so the way I read this, I don't see a way that somebody can put 3 panels on their roof because it's not permitted. So that's my comment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? We will close the public comment on this amendment, and then we'll go back to the presenter with the questions on.
Can you read the definition of small and large?
Can we pull the ordinance up? I can show you the definition of a small facility, as I believe up to 25 kilowatts.
I guess I can try.
Yeah,
So,
I'll have to do it on my phone.
if the board remembers when we discussed going to a special exception criteria, that small facility could be up to the size of a home, a good sized rancher with a small facility, 2,500 square feet. And it was the board's decision, you were fairly clear that you wanted that particular, a facility that size, you wanted to go through that special exception process, that you felt you needed to look at it. So a smaller facility would be, these are on-site, like Matt just mentioned, these are this would be accessory to, it's almost like it's mechanical equipment accessory to the structure. I mean, you're looking at, Mr. Mansfield just mentioned, 22 panels at 4 by 8 a piece, which does, it's all incorporated within the roof structure. It's not structured outside of the structure, or the structure of the home itself. So these are basically on panel. We've been permitting these for years.
Thank you.
They've been coming in, there has never been any issue with them. It's just been, this is a zoning determination.
So what we have done, what we are doing here tonight is to make solar panel installations special exception unless it's been removed by, as it said in red on the different things that you went through. And this would eliminate the 3 panels on somebody's house or in a waterfront district from the special exception. Is that?
It doesn't rise to the level of a special exception.
Exactly.
It just doesn't rise to the level of that. It's an on-site accessory use, as Matt made a good analogy. It's almost as if you had to put several HVA system units on your roof.
Right.
Would you require a special exception for that? And the answer is probably not. So,
and I think you're okay as long as the interpretation stays that way.
Right.
Yeah,
because I don't think
don't we need to clarify it and say that it is okay?
Well, I think
On the
you can
roof?
do so tonight because the board's will was not to restrict people from putting solar panels on their homes. It was more targeted at large producing facilities. That's the way I took it.
Yeah, that's how.
And, you know, I think what Dave's saying is the planning office, by interpretation, would interpret anything to serve that one home to be an accessory use. He's kind of stating that at the podium tonight. As long as that stays the interpretation and the will of the board, you're safe with that. But Pete, you're not wrong. If you clarify it in the ordinance to remove all doubt, then you don't leave it to interpretation.
And to that point, the ordinance committee is currently working on that particular whole solar ordinance in and of itself. So that's something that could be added into those comments, and we can further tighten that up through our ordinance review committee. We can create a definition and tighten and make sure there's no issue with any interpretation with that. But until that time, we've made a determination in the past, and I'm willing to stand by that determination.
Yeah.
And stay consistent with previous determinations.
Do you all believe that clarified the question? It's clear in my mind.
But you are going to write something to clarify it.
In the coming, our ordinance committee will work on that. We'll work on that.
Okay.
We can add that in, because we're working on the solar ordinance holistically. You know, like I mentioned previously, we want to get some of the confusion because they're embedded in each district, and they're starting to get, they're making that particular district regulations a little bit too onerous. So we can pull, a lot of it's common language, we can pull that out and put it into a just supplementary district regulations, another section of that, and make it so much simpler for everybody to follow and understand. Where whatever district you are in, you would go to that particular supplementary district regulations and work from there. And then you wouldn't have to, it would simplify the ordinance is what it does. In the meantime, we're going to look at other items too. We'll look at our surety requirements, we'll look at setback requirements, we're going to look at screening requirements, we're going to look at all the components of this solar ordinance to make sure that we're doing what the public wants us to do, because we're hearing certain things.
David and I had discussed the possibility of asking Dominion to provide surety for these solar, I want to say farms, but yards or whatever you want to call them, that feed back into their network and are backed by Delaware Shell Corporations, LLCs, that when their balance sheet starts to get red ink on it, go ahead and find them to dig those things up. I don't think that's going to happen. So I'd like for us to look towards Dominion for surety as we move forward with projects of that magnitude.
And those are things we can vet out through that process and investigate.
Did the Planning Commission spend any amount of time, Dave, on the 4 definitions that we see on the screen? You've got the small system solar energy facilities, large-scale solar energy facilities, and then we kick it up another notch to small utility scale and then utility scale. Utility scale clearly being the largest.
Right.
Did they spend a lot of time really differentiating between the utility scale definition and just the facilities?
The large, between, like, for instance, a small scale?
Yeah.
The small utility scale and the large
because
scale?
I think a lot of the, and correct me if I'm wrong, ladies and gentlemen of the board, but the will of the board was to try to address the larger ones, the utility scale projects.
Right.
Not so much the smaller scale stuff.
Well, that second one, 10 acres is no small piece of
Well,
property.
that's right.
No, not.
But that's a large scale project. There's actually 4 classifications
Right.
of solar farms there.
Well, what I gathered, it was the board's will to look at, they wanted to look at all the solar facilities. And since it's defined, a small system, which is up to 25 kilowatts, which through some basic things that I've researched could be a facility is the size of a house. You could have 2,500 square feet of, approximately 2,500 square feet of solar panels. And it was my interpretation that the board wanted to see that too.
So the first category, small system, not more than 25 kilowatts, that's in the residential and whatever, those are the ones that we have removed or are potentially removing.
Right.
The second one, the third one, and the fourth one will move towards special exception.
Well, any district that we removed everything from certain districts, we just removed them all. We'll look at how we haven't had any requests for a small facility such as the 25 kilowatt. We just haven't. It was something, we're relying on the industry to give us information. They suggested we set it up. We haven't seen one yet.
Yeah, so that was the industry spec.
It's an industry spec,
recommended
right.
that back in 2017.
So these are industry standards that they're giving us to say, this is where you guys probably need a definition. This is separated from this, and this is separated from this, and so forth and so on. So we based our definitions off of that, and the definitions have expanded. We've added those other facilities and modified some through our process in the past few months. So, but when we removed them from certain districts, we removed all of them, including the small scale, because we do not have, it was the intent to have them as special exception, and we do not have special exception criteria. So, in those particular districts for that. So we would have to create more layers of special exception criteria in certain districts that are even more problematic for facilities due to the fact that, such as residential or maybe cluster development, for instance. But how would you sped up special exception criteria for that in a district if somebody wanted to put solar panels, 4 acres of solar panels out in a cluster development? So it's almost as if we need to wait till somebody does that and look at it rather than trying to guess at what they might want and put special exception criteria in there. In other words, we're chasing our tail a little bit trying to figure out what the industry's doing. Let's just keep it simple and try to simplify the ordinance, and in districts that's probably not appropriate, remove them for now, work with our ordinance and move these over to special exception criteria. And all of these systems are going to be bound by the special exception criteria that's listed. I mean, even at this point, even a 2,500 square foot facility is going to be bound by certain sureties in those requirements.
So, Dave, is it accurate to say that except for solar panels on a property for use, for electricity used on that property, with the exception of that, any other solar project is going to require coming to the board? Is that correct?
Other than
Okay.
panels on the structure.
On the structure for use at that
Accessory
site.
uses to homes, yeah.
Right.
Those
yeah.
will be permitted by right.
And anything else, which is, I think, what the intention was.
That's what I heard
And that's
from-
what
that's
this
what I heard
does.
from the board.
And, yeah, okay.
Well, that's essentially my question. So the interpretation will remain like, say, I don't know, not that I know anything, but we get a Wawa, and the Wawa wants to put solar panels on top of the convenience store. It's accessory to the use of that convenience store.
Correct.
It's not something that would need a special exception to be
Correct.
prohibited.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Where's the Wawa going?
I told you I know nothing. I'm just using that as an example. But I'll have 4 phone calls tomorrow as soon as that video goes online.
Where's the Wawa?
Well, 25 kW is a fairly big
Right.
number of panels. With 22 panels, I think the highest I've ever seen the output was at 5 kW.
So you can see they can, I went on and researched a little bit. I think 25 kV, it equates to about 2,500 square feet of panels, and that's approximate. I guess it
Yeah.
depends on the efficiency or whatever panels, but That's one source, and I'm sure another source may have another answer. But that's just a rough ballpark. That's kind of what I try to give a reference point. And the industry's been slow to give us reference points on area because they talk about output. And output doesn't mean a whole lot to us. We, as citizens, we want to know how many acres it's taken up. That's what we're looking at. And it's hard to correlate the two. It depends on how they've spaced the panels out, and so it's a little bit apples and oranges in that case. But it's up to them to make that conversion and give us a number we can crunch as far as how big is their site going to be and how much is it going to impact. That's on them.
Notwithstanding the shorter days in the winter, but I imagine the lower angle of the sun decreases output for part of the year just because you don't have it.
Clouds and everything.
Clouds I understand, but I'm just saying in the wintertime on a clear day, you would have less output towards that 2,500 just because the sun doesn't ever get high in the sky like it does in the summertime.
In June and late June, early July is going to be the peak.
Oh, I checking mine, I'm anywhere from 100 to 5,000, depending on what time of day it is, how many clouds there are, It's
all right, well, I've got to say, I'm not sure that when I read it, I hear that I comprehend exactly what Dave has assured us of with regards to this, but we're not going to be interfering with basically on-site generation and use, whether it's for a Wawa or somebody's house or waterfront commercial or whatever. But every other installation of solar is going to come under the special exception, and all of this wording will be straightened out by you and the ordinance committee in the ensuing months.
We can work on that.
Okay.
We can work on it because we have a lot to work on in this ordinance. We're going to work in the next coming weeks and months to try to iron this out.
Okay. Any other questions of Mr. Kretz?
No, but I'd like to say one other thing, because I'm kind of big on solar. The inverters are what is really making the solar panels go. My little brother up in Woodston, Massachusetts, puts his power into batteries, and he spends as much money on batteries as he would have if he just bought the power straight way. With my with the inverter that I've got, it is unbelievably good. It's so good that if I have a power failure, you would think, oh, good, Mansfield, you've got 22 panels generating. They won't generate because I've got the generator on at the same time, and it tries to keep absolutely in phase with the generator, which is up and down, on hertz or cycles per second, is so unsteady that my inverter just says, to hell with it, I'll wait till you go back on.
So just taking a quick scan of the ordinance, we already have utility scale projects under special exception anyway, and then in only a certain district.
Correct.
Okay.
Utility scales are limited to the district.
Yep. Okay.
Any other questions of Mr. Kretz? All right. Inasmuch as this ordinance was a request by this board, I would presume that a motion to accept it would not be hard to come by.
Right. I'll make that motion for the
Mr. Jesse?
I'll make that motion for the special exception.
I'll second.
Ordinance.
Motion duly seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, so ordered. At this point, we're going to move we had a closed session that was scheduled for the first half of the meeting, and because Mr. Walker had to be away, that was moved to the end of this session. I understand there is a possibility that some action may come out of this, so anybody that would want to wait to see how that came out is certainly welcome to. But at this point, Madam County Attorney.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, you need a motion to, pursuant to the Code of Virginia, Section 2.2-3711, A3 and A8. This is for the discussion or consideration of the acquisition of real property for a public purpose, specifically regarding the airport, where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body, and for consultation with legal counsel regarding said acquisition. And you need and pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A1 for the discussion of personnel matters regarding the county administrator and the county attorney.
We need a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Second.
Motion seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, so ordered. Now, do members of the public and the press wish to wait? In which case, we'll move to the other room, or if you don't, you can leave and we'll stay in here. It's up to y'all.
No, yeah.
They said, I guess they said we ain't hurting your feelings.
Good night, too.
Thank you, David. All right, we're back on.
All right, Mr. Chairman, we need a motion to certify the following statement. To the best of the members' knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted in the motion by which the closed session was called was considered or discussed in the closed session.
Do we have said motion?
Yes.
Second.
Motion and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, so ordered. Let's see, we didn't have anything actionable to come out of that, did we? What we have is a desire to, wait until Matt can hear what we're saying.
Sorry, we need to open the door.
Yeah, I'm with you. Matt, there was some concern that we're missing one board member in the discussion of your contract matching Heather's and with the rest of the employees. So we elected to push that discussion to September, when hopefully we have all 5 board members. Nothing negative, but just we really wanted to have what we call it, how we do it, and in the meantime, we would like to do, I guess this falls to Heather, some research as to how other counties negotiate with their county administrator in the midst of the contract. Because the contract says you're going to earn this much money and it shall not go down. It doesn't say it shall not go up, and it doesn't say if it goes up what it's going to go up by. It doesn't say how often it'll be negotiated or anything. So we'd like to get a handle on that so that we don't step off into Never Never Land. So I hope that is that an adequate explanation of where we're, okay.
So by research, we're looking at samples from the
Northumberland, the Isle of Wight, whatever,
yeah,
I guess particularly ones a little bit closer to us that, might have more of a local flavor, but that would be my desire.
So specifically, you want to know how other jurisdictions negotiate. Are you looking for examples of other administrators' contracts or just their negotiation strategy?
I think I'm pretty satisfied with our contract. I would like to know how they negotiate increases within the contract.
Okay.
There's no question when a contract comes up for renewal, that's time to talk about money. But
Right.
That's my thought. That's just me. Is that good?
No,
Is that
that's
good for everybody else?
Yeah.
All righty. Anybody else have any business to come before the August meeting of the?
I think we just have your public comment period, Mr.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and open the, unless I'm missing, I'm gonna open my public comment to no public. So
I got a comment. It's gonna take about an hour though.
Okay, all right. So I will close the public comment period and entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
I gotta go
All
to
right.
work.
What happens now is you vote with your feet, because if you get up and walk out, that means you support.